I got into Bitcoin, first of all, because of politics. I saw Bitcoin as a political instrument to destroy the state. Bitcoin allows us to achieve similar ends, which is a complete restructuring of the state and political order. And all we have to do is basically run these little computers and like download these apps on our phones. It's beautiful. In my office, I have a gigantic metal frame with two words, which is destroy fiat. That's the mission. Yeah. The mission is to destroy fiat.
Was Bitcoin an invention or a discovery?
My contention is that Bitcoin was invented. I see Satoshi's genius as being the person that created all the components and made them come together like an engineer who was designing a motor. The underlying principles of like a motor, like thermodynamics, were discovered, but the motor itself was created and engineered. Bitcoin does not exist in nature. It's definitely like a man-made phenomenon. It's the stupidest argument to me that you shouldn't spend Bitcoin. Oh, really? What should I spend? Fiat? If I shouldn't spend Bitcoin because Bitcoin is going to be worth more in the future, why the should I be holding fiat in the first place?
People think money is the root of all evil when it's actually the other way around. Evil is the root of all money, except Bitcoin. Francis, welcome to the Bitcoin Infinity Show.
Thanks, man. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm very happy to have you here. Unfortunately, Luke is not with us here at the beginning. I hope Luke can join later, but right now it's just you and me. And we've been waiting to do this for a long time. I'm so happy to have you here. So let's start. For our listeners that don't know you, can you give us a TLDR on Francis and what you're doing now and how you ended up there?
Yeah, well, I'm a Bitcoin OG, quote unquote. I've been working in Bitcoin for 12 years now. Been doing many things in my Bitcoin career, but the last 10 years I've been focused on self-custody tools for sovereign individuals. That's kind of like my focus in Bitcoin, is to facilitate sovereignty, and by creating software, by creating apps. And the most known app of that is the Bull Bitcoin Exchange, which is a Bitcoin-only non-custodial exchange. And what a non-custodial exchange is basically when you buy Bitcoin, you can't leave it there. You actually have to give like a Lightning address or a Bitcoin address before you buy. Like there's just no option to leave it on the platform. So 100% of every Bitcoin purchase is also a withdrawal. So kind of forcing people to take custody. And I also work on a lot of open source software initiatives. That's been my passion for the last couple of years. I built a non-custodial Bitcoin wallet, the Bull Bitcoin wallet. I work on backend infrastructure. So my background is more of like an economics policy type guy originally, but over the years, I kind of gradually went into the software and business and app development side of Bitcoin.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but just as Luke, you're a refugee from the People's Republic of Canada also, right? You've fled the communism over there.
Yeah, right. That's definitely a big part of my story. So I was born in Montreal. I was a Quebecer for most of my life. And actually in Montreal, we had a physical Bitcoin community center called the Bitcoin Embassy. That was great from 2013 to 2017. So I always really liked Montreal. I loved the city, but I decided to leave during COVID. It was pretty bad in Quebec, and living in a big city in like Montreal is really awful. So I left Canada for Costa Rica, where completely coincidentally, I hooked up with this local group of Bitcoiners. Well, not coincidentally, because you know how these things go, right? So, you move to a new place, and like I was telling myself, okay, I'm gonna stay low profile this time. I don't want people to recognize me. I don't want to be a Bitcoin guy. And then after like a few months, I'm like, I'm organizing a Bitcoin meetup. Fuck this, and like, where is all the Bitcoiners? I want to see my people. So we organized a Bitcoin meetup, and then I moved to this place called Bitcoin Jungle, and here there is a really, really incredible Bitcoin circular economy project. I think that a lot of people have seen some of my videos. There's like a lot of videos of people going around Costa Rica like buying stuff at the farmers market, but the scale of it is hard to comprehend. Where like I don't use fiat, I really don't use my credit card, almost never ever. and I also don't use cash. I use Bitcoin everywhere throughout the country. So we have a physical office here for Bitcoin education. So that's also kind of like my passion project. Is I came from the Bitcoin education side. That's how I started at the Bitcoin Embassy like 12 years ago. I love installing wallets. There's like nothing I like more in the world than to signing up someone to Bitcoin, right, signing up, showing him how to download the wallet, showing them what a backup is, doing the first transaction, signing up merchants. And it's a really fantastic thing. We have this public office. It's basically like office hours. It's like an information desk, and people walk in and they're like, they have a problem with Bitcoin, like like a practical issue, or they want to learn more, or they want to move money and they need some advice. And then every day there's kind of like, Bitcoin's kind of weird, so you always have like these interesting stories. And just the other day I have this guy who walks into my office and he just says, "I'm here to claim my sovereignty," like this American guy. And I'm like, "Well, you're in the right place, buddy." So we move the coins away from his Coinbase onto a cold card, and we do that for free. It's just a really fun passion project.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about Costa Rica. I just came back from El Salvador, first time I've been there, and like I love it. I love the fact that you can walk into any place just randomly and ask if they accept Bitcoin, and a lot of them do, like more than you
Mm-hmm.
think. So yeah. And I had heard a lot of like, no, adoption is not what you think it is. They don't accept it everywhere. But I think the adoption is absolutely phenomenal in El Salvador, and I've
Well,
heard
it's
the same
orders of
about
magnitude higher than everywhere else, right? So
yeah.
like, even if you have a few places in the town that accept Bitcoin, it's already more than, like, I don't know where to spend Bitcoin in Paris, maybe like 10 locations for a city
Yeah.
of like 10 million people. Whereas it's very ironic, like here in the where I live is kind of like Bitcoin beaches. So it's pastoral, it's the countryside, it's far from infrastructure. People are people are not necessarily poor because there's like tourism, but they're not, it's not a big city. And you'll have like these very incredible situations where you have like a person selling fruits on the side of the highway, like a grocery store with a tin roof, but they have Starlink and they have BTC Pay server running. It's really mind blowing, and for them it's totally ubiquitous, right? So if I go to a store and I say, "Hey, can I pay with Bitcoin?" It's like, "Yeah, sure." You know, take the phone, scan the QR code, and that's it. So they don't have that kind of like psychological barrier to Bitcoin that a lot of Westerners do. Where a very good example, if I try to orange fill a merchant here in Costa Rica, this is how the conversation goes. "Hey, can I pay with Bitcoin?" And they're like, "No." And I say, "Why not?" And they will reply, "Well, I don't have the app. I don't know how it works." And I just say, "Okay, cool. Give me your phone. I'll download the app." And do a few things on the phone, and then I explain, and then I do a little payment, and then they have Bitcoin, and then that's it. Nobody's gonna say like, "I don't want to accept Bitcoin. It's money for criminals or terrorists." Like they don't have that like normie psychological block that you would get in Canada or Europe or something.
No, that was my experience in El Salvador too. Like there's this one tooth old lady in a supermarket, and I asked if she aceptamos Bitcoin, and she's like, "No, no, but my daughter is around. I'll call her." And 10 minutes later, her daughter shows up in a pickup truck and accepts Bitcoin. So it's
Nice.
but I love the like the first word that comes to mind when I think about you is based. Like, and the same thing for that lake in Costa Rica. It's, as you say, BTC Pay server and
Hmm.
Starlink and stuff. It's the real deal. It's not some Shiva wallet bullshit. It's full on hardcore. And the same goes for Bull Bitcoin.
Yep.
I remember, like, first time I saw you, I think was in Riga 2019, which is like the first real conference I went to, and like so many connections I made there. It's just insane in hindsight what kind of people were there, uh, and Bull Bitcoin. You had a whole squad of Canucks over there,
Yeah,
like
Matex was there. There was a bunch of people there, and
yeah,
we organized a shooting range for Bitcoiners to shoot your first gun, and yeah, it was
oh
great,
yeah,
man. And it was right at the time, I think, where Bull Bitcoin started to exist as a new brand, because I had been running Bull Bitcoin under another brand for many many years, under a brand called Bills, and Bills was to pay your bills with Bitcoin. So Bull
yeah,
Bitcoin
with a
started out
Y,
as,
right?
yeah,
Bills. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I remember that.
yeah, exactly.
Mm.
It started out as a bill payment processor, kind of like Bitrefill-ish, I guess, but more focused for like big purchases, like buying cars and like paying your rent and like that kind of stuff. So we've rebranded it to Bull Bitcoin in late 2018, where I had this kind of like midlife crisis in Bitcoin, where I was like, so what am I doing in this thing? Because I had also been doing some research and blockchain. I was like into debates with shitcoiners about blockchain technology. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, what is this thing? And we were like coming out of the fork wars, so I was trying to figure out like what is the identity of like what we're trying to do, and it was Bitcoin maximalism and cypherpunk values. Like this is like what, as a company, we're not just a company, we are a cultural thing. Because after the fork wars, we kind of like realized that there's some kind of politics in Bitcoin, and there's different factions. There's like the normie NPC shitcoin blockchain people, and then there's the cypherpunk, and then there's the NGU maximalist types. And I was like, okay, so like we are like in this corner of the cultural zeitgeist, and we really want to push for that. So like our identity is basically like sovereignty, cypherpunk principles, and maximalism. Like we came out with this Bitcoin only kind of like theme, which I don't want to take credit for like a Bitcoin only company, but I really think that there was like very few companies that were using that as a marketing thing, right? So some companies were like, they just are a Bitcoin company, but they were not a Bitcoin maximalist company, like outspokenly. So we kind of like said like, let's make this our theme, like fuck the shit coins, like as a corporate strategy, And now that was fun. And then everybody at Bull Bitcoin is very based, it's a self-funded startup. It's very organic. It started out, me and another guy, and I was paying bills every single day, like manually. Like when people were sending Bitcoin, it started out really like garage. Like the way that bills worked is like I had an Electrum wallet, and people would send coins to my wallet, and I would log into a banking system and pay people's bills for them. So it was really, really manual, and it grew really slowly. It took a long time for us to grow, because I didn't want to take any investor money at all. So like everybody at Bull Bitcoin that I recruited was very deliberate, and I only hire like based Bitcoiners. I discriminate 100% when I hire someone. And nowadays, I discriminate a little less, because we have like very talented engineers that are, maybe they're not as based as I am. But yeah, so the company is really just, when you say base, like that makes me very proud and satisfied that that's the first thing that comes to mind.
No, but I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite companies in Bitcoin for sure, just because of this attitude. Because there are so many companies that that take pride in following the new MiCA regulation and doing the ESG score bullshit and doing the KYC properly and all of that stuff. And Bull Bitcoin is like the opposite. They like refuse to take orders, and like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you can mail cash via the Canadian postal system and get Bitcoin on the other side, KYC free.
You used to. Unfortunately, we were shut down in Canada on that specific thing, and the order to shut us down came. We don't know where exactly, but it's very clear that it came from pretty high up in the government. So yeah, you used to be able to buy, because there's when you look at regulations, my attitude, my personal philosophy is to interpret it in the way that benefits the users the most, and to never give a single inch on any technicality, right? So really, like for example, in Canada, there's KYC requirements, there's AML, and there's all that stuff, but there is like a threshold where you can allow no KYC transactions under a certain threshold. So of course we're going to allow that, and of course we're going to encourage that. Same thing for selling Bitcoin, and there's all sorts of things that they sound like technicalities, but the way that even we create our databases, the way that we report information, like we're always giving the least amount of data humanly possible, in a way that we can stay in business. And my attitude is always to be like, well, we're just gonna do it, and then if the regulator is unhappy, like let them send me a letter, right? And then we'll figure out where the line is, because companies tend to be over compliant because they're afraid, right? So and it's even in the case of MiCA and other regulations, like there's some of the things that the exchanges are doing, they don't have to do. They don't have to do them, right? They're just over complying in order to please the regulator to make sure that they're gonna. And there's in the exchange space, it's kind of interesting. There's a fear of getting debanked. So I don't think a lot of exchange operators are afraid of going to jail. What they're afraid of is that their bank is gonna close down their bank accounts because they're non-compliant. And what I've been doing is just opening tons of bank accounts everywhere. And yeah, it has happened. When we had this thing in Canada where it became known that you could buy Bitcoin with no KYC at the post office, and maybe it was a mistake on my part, but I definitely advertised that a lot. I made it a big thing, and it was incredible, man. The volumes were insane. Like, it was crazy. People were absolutely lining up at the post office, buying Bitcoins with piles of cash. And as a result of this, some politician heard about this, obviously, and became offended like a little virgin, and then pressured some of our banks to debank us. And, I lost a bank account over that, but I have many others. So yeah, I mean, it's and it's interesting because as a, I'm a big libertarian. I'm like as close to an anarcho-capitalist as you can get without being a full ANCAP. I'm kind of like I'm a minarchist. So I don't, and I am passionately so. That's how I got into Bitcoin. I got into Bitcoin first of all because of politics. I saw Bitcoin as a political instrument to destroy the state, right? So that's like why I'm in here. So it is very annoying to run a Bitcoin exchange because you are faced with all sorts of compliance, and it's really, really like emotionally and like psychologically and spiritually damaging to have to comply to regulation. So we do the best we can, to do as little as we can in order to stay alive. And I've always known in the back of my mind, like maybe the idea of bull Bitcoin getting banned is always in the back of my mind. Like, I know that it's something that can happen, and there are certain lines that I'm not willing to cross in order to make money. So right now, I think that we're navigating the line of MiCA, for example. Like, MiCA is a fucking pain in the ass. It's really annoying, but there are certain things that we can do to soften it up. Like, certain ways that the travel rule is implemented. Like, there's ways for us to, like, we don't have to do as much as some exchanges do. So we try to do that. There are certain lines that I like won't cross. Like, for example, giving a government the entire database of everybody's transaction as a big dump because they want to tax them. Like, that's not something that we do. Like, we don't do that. The governments don't ask us for people's Bitcoin trades unless it's like suspicious of money laundering and stuff like that. So there's like certain lines that we don't cross. And that's also why I've been working on this. I have other projects, like the Bitcoin wallet. Bitcoin wallet is great because it's a non-custodial wallet. It's not linked to any exchange. I don't have a bank account. So, if I become too based to be allowed to exist, I can always work on an open source software project. I don't mind doing that.
Hello there, fellow Bitcoiner. Take your coins off the exchange right now. You need to take self-custody of your coins. Now, how do you do that? First of all, you need a good hardware wallet, and I would recommend the Bitbox. So go to bitbox.swiss/infinity and get your Bitbox now with a discount. Also, you need somewhere to store your seed phrase. So why not get one of those wonderful steel seed plate storage thingies from stampseed.com/infinity, and you can get the everything divided seed plate. It's beautiful. Also, if you're advanced and if you want to start with generational wealthing, which is a fun hobby I have, you can go to the Bitcoin Advisor group of lovely fellows from down under that can help you store your Bitcoin for a long time using multi-sig solutions. So check out Bitbox, Stampseed, and the Bitcoin Advisor, or GFY. Back to the show. I think that some of, first of all, the ANCAP angle, I think that the correct way to view, or the way I view it is that no government at all is probably utopia, but fighting for a smaller government is always the right choice, regardless of how small it is. Like, you can always try to make it smaller. That's probably the right thing to do, right? So
yeah,
I think that's what you meant by minimalist or something like something.
Yeah. Like, and I really like the terminology of minarchist. So a minarchist is basically law like courts of law,
Yeah.
and like a prison system and like a police, right? So I have been NCAP, like fully NCAP in the past. Back when I first also got into Bitcoin, and like decentralized assassination markets and private armies and all sorts of like zero government kind of snow crash utopian future. um but then again, something happens also when you have like kids, and when you become a little older, you're like, actually, like, I'm not sure if I think having courts of law, like a strong rule of law for enforcing contracts, it's probably good. And no, the contracts are not going to be enforced on the blockchain. And yes, you're going to have, to have some kind of police and courts to settle disputes. Not everybody's going to be, not everything is going to be a smart contract that's just self-regulating. Um, that's the goal. I'm not in my office, but in my office, I have a gigantic metal frame with one big word, two words, which is destroy fiat. That's the mission.
Yeah.
The mission is to destroy fiat. So
Yeah.
the way that I got into Bitcoin was I was a libertarian policy analyst. So what does that do? It's basically I write these little academic papers and like blog posts talking about the free market and why the government sucks. And um, so it's like a think tank, right? I was working for a libertarian think tank, and then the goal of a libertarian think tank is kind of like what Elon is doing with Doge. It's kind of like, oh, we're going to cut a little bit here and then we're going to cut a little bit there. And slowly but surely, we will unravel the state. But then it's kind of like trying to scoop the water against the tide. Like, you cannot stop the tide. And even though I really appreciate what they're doing with Doge, there's like systematic things that they can't change, which is like they're printing an insane amount of money. And as long as you have the money, and then at some point you realize, what is the source of all of this? Like, why is the tide rising? It's like, what's the gravitational force making the tide rise? And it's the money printer. The money
Absolutely.
printer. The money printer is that. So it's like, okay, I can try to cut taxes by 10%, but then if the government still has the control over the funds, they can still finance all of their bullshit, right? And there's the whole cycle of government debt, of interest, of boom and bust cycle, and all of that. So the goal of Bull Bitcoin is destroy fiat, and the end goal of that is to have a small state. So I see Bitcoin as Bitcoin is a thing in itself for me also, because at some point, like, you start, Bitcoin is its own end. It's not just a means to an end, but it is also a means to the end, which is the massive reduction of the state. And ultimately, if the government cannot pay the enforcers will not work for free. So the bureaucracy, the spy agencies, the global cabal that is trying to micromanage our lives, they are paid rather well, actually. That's what we're seeing with Doge. It's like these bureaucrats, they're paid 450 grand a year, to like enforce these policies on us. So cut off the money printer, and then the state will shrink on its own. And it's also beautiful because that's like a peaceful revolution. Throughout history, what do you do if you want to have a revolution against the state and change it dramatically? I'm not talking about like a little reform like they're doing in the States. What I see what Trump is doing is not a revolution. It's a reform. He's a reformer. He's not a revolutionary. So historically, how do you do a revolution to completely change the state? You have to kill people, right? There's like that's just the way that it's been done. So Bitcoin allows us to achieve similar ends, which is a complete restructuring of the state and political order. And all we have to do is basically run these little computers and like download these apps on our phones. It's beautiful, right? So we're really lucky to be able to be revolutionaries, but without having to kill people. It's awesome.
No, it's the peaceful revolution. It is being advertised as by us, I guess. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's absolutely great. It allows you to elevate yourself uh, outside of these systems, so that you don't have to comply with whatever bullshit they come up with. Because, like, yeah, if you believe in the non-aggression principle, which is basically saying you have the right to be left alone, no man has the right to decide over another man's life if he doesn't intrude on other people's property or physical being. So if I don't violate against you, you have no right to tell me what to do. And Bitcoin allows you to live that, to actually live that. And I think it's absolutely beautiful. We talked a bit about exchanges before and them being afraid, and therefore they comply with this whatever whatever the regulators say, and some of them are afraid of losing their bank accounts. As you said, they opened a ton of bank accounts. I think I'd love to pick your brain on this. I think a lot of them are actually, their goal is to be bought by a bank at some time. So they follow these regulations, and they're good little boys or good little dogs, just in order for a big bank they hope that a big bank will buy them at some point.
I,
What do you think of that?
I, I think that's probably correct. And as an entrepreneur, which is running an exchange, you think about, okay, so what is my exit strategy, right? So you can do an IPO, but doing IPOs is really, really hard and really, really risky, and like it's not the best way to liquidate your company. So an acquisition by a bank is probably what a lot of people are aspiring to. I think some exchanges also are thinking about becoming banks as well. I think we're going to see that more and more, where they have so much capital that they can literally apply to become a bank charter. So yes, it is not only that they are looking to keep their existing banking arrangements, but also I think yes, they do want to become part of the system, because that's how you kind of like liquidate your assets. And there's like two ways, at Bull, like and also I'm not sure how much VC. I don't know how VC works, to be perfectly honest. I've never had a VC. I don't know. I know a lot of VCs, like, and we have friends in common that are VCs. We have we have a lot of friends that are venture capitalists. So I know them, but I've never had a working relationship with a VC. I think some of the ones that we know are probably not as bad as the other ones, and I'm talking about like 1031 or Jeff Booth and Preston and Time Chain Capital and Alan Farrington. There's like a few VCs that I think are probably cool guys, but I think there's a lot of VCs that are putting pressure on these exchanges to be like, shut the fuck up, take zero risks, over comply, and then raise the second round, and then we'll raise the third round, and then after the fourth round, we're either gonna IPO, and if you IPO, you have to be ultra compliant, ultra compliant, of course, or we're gonna get acquired by Chase or by JP Morgan or by this other big bank. So I think the VCs might be putting a lot of pressure here. And there's another thing which is very interesting. So again, I don't want to talk too much about the Doge, but it's on my mind because it's on Twitter. But you have these when a company becomes very big, and companies become very, very big because they raise tons of money, right? Because Bull Bitcoin is not very big. We have like 32 employees, and we probably have, like, I would say we're not like a big exchange, right? So we're not Coinbase, we're not Kraken, and we're not Bitfinex. But we're also not in the small exchange category. We're definitely like in the middle category. We don't publish our volumes, but they're big. Like, we do big volumes. But we're only 30 people. Whereas, and I don't want to take a stab at Kraken because I like the Kraken guys, but they have like 5,000 employees or something. I don't remember the exact 3,000 to 5,000 employees or something. So these companies, they grow really rapidly. And what happens when they grow rapidly? It's you have like these factions within the companies that become their own little bureaucracies. So like, a compliance department, for example, will overly comply because they need to justify their existence and their paycheck, right? So you have these companies that have compliance department that are like 75 people that are almost like this segregated micro entity within the company, which has its own decision-making power. So raising a ton of money really early and growing really, really fast. So like, if you look at like, I have a personal touch on every single part of the business. And the compliance people that work for me, they're people that share our ideology and share our values, right? Whenever a decision is being made, is this causing a privacy leak? Is this causing a security leak? Is this necessary? Is the data that we're giving the minimum that we can? Are we giving too much data? Like, and they think like this because I spend time with them and I have like not control over them, but like, we speak on a regular basis. Whereas these very large companies that raise ton of money, the founder's vision, because the founder may have been originally a cypherpunk, but the value of the founder has not permeated the company because it grew too fast. You look at guys like Jesse Powell at Kraken, or you look at the Bitfinex founders, like the Tether founders, and even guys like even guys like, I don't know, maybe not Coinbase, but some of these companies, like, I kind of think like early on they must have been cypherpunks. Like, they must have, in the very early beginning of their careers, at least because they all got interested in Bitcoin, between 2011 and 2014, and that was like the cypherpunk libertarian era of Bitcoin before it became, mainstream. So I think these guys must have originally been, pro privacy and pro sovereignty, but then their companies grow too big, and then they're focused on the finance side of the company and growing uh, user acquisition and these. And also the other thing is like they listed all these shit coins, right? So now their mind is just filled with shitcoinery. So now they have to do with securities regulation and all of that. And by the way, like being a Bitcoin only company is so clutch in terms of like not having to deal with securities regulation, compliance, all that kind of nonsense. It's so amazing. And even just like focusing on technology, so there's things that we focus on, that we do at Bull, that it's not really well advertised and marketed. But in 2017 we started to sign with PGP every single Bitcoin invoice that we were publishing, because I thought, okay, so what if someone wants to pay a car that's $70,000, and I display an invoice on my website, and then I change the address afterwards, and I tell the guy, you sent it to the wrong address. I could do that. I could screw people over all the time, and they'd be like, no, I sent it to the address that was on the screen. I'm like, well, you must have sent it to the wrong address. How does the person have a proof that this was a legitimate invoice created by me? Or maybe there's like a man in the middle, or maybe it's a spoofed website, or maybe I can change the rate and be like, oh, actually, like the rate was this rate when you sent it. And it's like, no, actually, I'm pretty sure it was it. So we started to sign those with PGP and timestamp them, right? And this took like a long time to build, because we only had Bitcoin to worry about. We're not worried about integrating Solana or Ethereum or Monero. Like this takes a long. I had this conversation with a hardware wallet manufacturer years ago, where I was like, why don't you make this feature? I think it was PSBT or whatever. And it was like, yeah, we kind of want to do that, but we have to integrate Monero. And this also recently happened with a software mobile wallet. Like we integrated PayJoin in the Bull Bitcoin wallet, and it wasn't insanely hard, but it was like not trivial. It was like it's a pretty sophisticated thing to integrate PayJoin. And I was talking to this other wallet, and it's like, why didn't you integrate PayJoin? And I was looking at their what they're doing. It's like, oh, you guys are working on Solana right now. Okay, I see, right? So you don't have time for PayJoin because Solana is the new thing. So you have to run after Solana. And so instead of like getting deeper and deeper into what Bitcoin can do, you're scratching the surface on all the shitcoins and Bitcoin, right? So because Bitcoin can do a lot more things, and we can have an app layer on top of Bitcoin, which solves a lot of the protocol problems that people say that we need a soft fork for. I'm not like anti soft fork forever. I'm a Bitcoin conservative, right? And but I'm not like out of principle opposed to soft fork, and partly because a lot of the problems that we're trying to fix with soft forks, actually we can fix with apps instead, right? So PayJoin is a good example. So PayJoin fixes some of the privacy issues that we can do. There's all sorts of stuff that we can do with silence payments, with the Liquid network, with Noster, with Lightning. I'm not like the biggest fan of eCash, but there are some things that we can do with eCash. And if you combine Lightning, Liquid, eCash, Noster, Bitcoin, some app-to-app Bitcoin protocols, you can achieve some like pretty incredible things if you focus on Bitcoin and not shitcoins. That's the key, right? Because if you're just doing the main features of Bitcoin, send and receive, and then you move to Solana, and then you move to the other thing, and then we're never going deep enough in Bitcoin to like fully exploit it. So Bitcoin is underexploited. And also, if you look at the blockchain, all the spam that's happening, like all the exchanges are doing transactions that are spammy. And I'm not talking about ordinals. I'm talking about just the way that they use Bitcoin is so inefficient. It's unreal. Like major exchanges like Binance, they have like these they reuse like one address for a bunch of shit, and then they do these stupid ass consolidations at random times. And you're like, okay, so before we increase the block size, like if all of the exchanges had guys like the guys that work at Bull Bitcoin that were given the leeway to be like, hey, can we spend like 4 months to just look at the way that we create transactions? And I bet we could reduce the size of the existing transactions by like 80%, right? Sorry, I was going on a big rant here.
No. I love it. I
But
love it.
yeah, but yeah, the whole point is like focusing on Bitcoin allows us to get deeper into Bitcoin and discover what we can do with Bitcoin, which right now is being massively underexploited.
No, I agree with all of these points, and I love it because, like, I grew up with a Commodore 64, so all you had was 64 kilobytes of memory to do everything, which meant that programmers had to be really careful with how they used code. Like, the code had to be super efficient, and like, so when I see people harass the time chain with bullshitty consolidations and even worse, like the ordinals and runes and stamps and whatnot, like the equivalent of like 14-year-old girls spamming the internet with cat pictures. I mean, it's vulgar to me. Like, and I think in the long run, people will have to use base layer Bitcoin more efficiently, because it's going to be insanely expensive to be wasteful there, and that's a good thing. There was something else on my mind. Luke usually helps me out when I lose my train of thought like this. But yeah, what are your thoughts on the whole spam issue? Because like I recently had a talk in San Salvador, so let me lay it out for you. So the way I view it, like real estate, for instance, when being used as money, which it is now, because money doesn't work as a store of value, or as I prefer it, medium of exchange over time, because I think the dichotomy is false. Like, medium of exchange, store of value is just two sides of the same coin. It's just another dimension. So right now, the billionaire buys up all the seafront real estate because it solves a problem for the billionaire. It solves the inflation problem, so that because he can't hold cash, he needs to buy equity or stocks and bonds or real estate. So buy up all the real estate, which also drives up the prices and like eliminates the middle classes that no longer can live in a nice house at the beach, and the houses are empty and there's no one in them, which is like houses being used as money is destroying their functionality as houses. And I think the inverse is true, because I think there's, like, I call this the first law of clown world of dynamics, that everything that is true for fiat, the inverse is true for Bitcoin. So I think any other use case than this, a strict monetary use case for money, reduces its functionality as money. So if you could put alleged cat pictures, which aren't even cat pictures because they have nothing to do with, you can't order sats, like but if you say that you can, and you spam the chain with this bullshit, and if you do bad consolidations or whatever, then you're not using Bitcoin as money, which actually makes Bitcoin a slightly worse form of money every time you do that. It makes it more expensive to send and receive Bitcoin because you're using it for other shit. So what do you think of that? Can you?
Well, I agree 100% with what you said, and you said something very interesting. I really like the way you said it about store of value and medium of exchange being one and the same. The first time I actually heard someone say it in this way, but this is exactly the way that I've been thinking about it, and especially with something like Monero. And I'm just going to divert very quickly to Monero, because I have this thing where, I don't know, I just pick on Monero people a lot. I don't know, maybe they pick on me or something. I don't know, whatever. But the reason why Monero is not a good medium of exchange, because the Monero people argue, oh, you guys can have your NGU and we'll do the medium of exchange. And the reason why Monero is not a good medium of exchange is because it is also not a store of value. So in order for someone to accept a Monero payment, let's say you're a drug dealer, okay, and you accept a Monero payment, what are you going to do with that Monero? Well, what they say is, well, what if we just keep the Monero in the circular economy? Because of course, what the drug dealer is actually going to do is he's going to convert it to Bitcoin. That's what he's going to do, right? So the first thing he's going to do is he's going to go on a peer-to-peer exchange. He's going to switch that to Bitcoin, and then he's going to move the Bitcoins around, coin join them, and he's going to sell Bitcoin. He's not going to sell the Monero for fiat. That's not what these guys do. They sell the Monero for Bitcoin. They move the Bitcoins around. If they're smart, if they're not, they just sell it right away. But they all go back to Bitcoin and fiat because Monero loses its value over time, and that's undeniable. So because if you want adoption, you need a circular economy, and if you want a circular economy, you need the value of the currency to remain. So I fully agree with you. Like for me, NGU and medium of exchange are one and the same. You cannot have medium of exchange without NGU, or at least, NGE. Like it's either number goes equal or number goes up. Like it needs to be either equal or up, right, for people to accept as medium of exchange. And I don't really see, and that's another huge philosophical argument, I guess, but I don't really see the NGU use case being at least that solid without medium of exchange, right? And of course, the reason why people buy beachfront property is because it is scarce, right? So land is not scarce. There's a lot of land, but what's scarce is beachfront land. That's fucking scarce, and especially with a nice view. And people understand scarcity instinctively. They understand that if I buy something that is scarce, and it's like a very like 80 IQ way of thinking about it, but it's like if I buy something that's rare, it's going to go up, and this land is facing the ocean, and there's only 8 lots that are looking at the ocean here. So, and clearly we cannot build more ocean view lots. You can build more condos, but you can't build ocean view lots. Like there's just a finite amount of ocean view in the world. So people understand that, and they respond by buying it and investing in it, right? So seeking scarcity is just, it's probably hardwired in our brain through the human evolution. We understand that there's something that are hard to get, and if you find something that's hard to get and you can get it, you should probably get it, because even if you don't want it, someone else might want it in the future. So scarcity is like baked in. And of course, that's why real estate, especially like land costs, are like insanely high, because of that pursuit of scarcity, which is ingrained, I think, in the human psyche. And regarding ordinals, I was very, very perturbed, because I'm a big proponent of, and also, what's interesting, when you run a company like Bull Bitcoin, every purchase is a Bitcoin withdrawal. Okay, so we do a lot of transactions. Like we may not have as many users as Coinbase and Kraken and Bitfinex, but we do a lot of transactions, because 100% of every trade is a Bitcoin payment. And even though we have used Lightning since, the first Lightning prototype we did was 2018, didn't work really well, and then we fully launched it in 2021, I think. It's mostly on chain, right? It's still mostly on chain, and we also do a lot of internal transactions to manage our wallets, in order to, let's just call it, make it harder for hackers and fraudsters to spy on our users, right? So we do a lot of on-chain transactions. So when the fees go up, it actually does cost me a lot more money. And at some point, the amount of money I'm spending on fees per month is an amount that's so high that I think people would blush. That I'm a big financer of the Bitcoin mining industry. Let's just say at Bull Bitcoin. So obviously, when the fees go really high, it hurts. And even though we are doing our best to optimize, the subsidy of shitcoin VC money into the Bitcoin network is being so these shitcoiners are subsidized to make Bitcoin transactions that we also have to pay for. And it's like, people say, hey, like let them spend their money like idiots. Yeah, but like I'm also spending the money, right? So like when they spam the chain, I spend money too. It's not just them that are wasting money; they're wasting my money. So and obviously I agree with you. Bitcoin should not be a data layer, and every usage. Yeah.
More importantly, they bloat the UTXO set and make running a node, just firing up a node, more costly, and that's absolutely crucial too. So it's a bad behavior, and it's a flaw of the fiat system, this infinite lending thing that allows them this amount of cash to do bullshit. Like, it's not productive. No one in the world, humanity is not better off because someone spams the blockchain with JPEGs. Like, that's just not the case. And I think there are so many, like, we're going to see more of these like late stage fiat games, like having their dead cat bounces,
Yeah.
trying to like mess with Bitcoin, and to
Yeah.
various degrees of success. But it requires Bitcoiners to be somewhat vigilant and like take the
Yeah.
fights when we need them. I mean,
Yeah.
we won the battle, the big battle, like the hash size war, the block size wars, or
Yeah.
which were never about block size but about control. But we won that, so like we showed the man that the users are in charge. We need to win the next such battle as well. We need to stay vigilant. In my view,
Absolutely.
the only threat to Bitcoin is uh, us not being vigilant enough, or it's what is it? Complacency is the word
Yeah.
I'm looking for. Like
Absolutely.
because
Absolutely.
yeah.
There is like this phenomenon that, okay, so everything's good for Bitcoin. Why? Okay, so this
Yeah.
is something that a lot of Bitcoiners say, like, well, everything's good for Bitcoin anyway. So why is everything good for Bitcoin? Well, that's because of the anti-fragile nature of Bitcoin. Like, let's go deep in that. And Bitcoin is anti-fragile because it's composed of humans which react. It has white blood cells, which are nodes, right? So if the
Exactly.
white blood cells don't do their job, and Bitcoin is not anti-fragile, and in that case, not everything is good for Bitcoin. Everything is good for Bitcoin as long as you say, as long as we remain vigilant. That's like the premise. So people should say everything's good for Bitcoin as long as we are not complacent, right? That's like the thing that people don't say. The second part of the mantra. And when the ordinals thing happened, I was very upset because I was thinking, like, these guys are using. We are in a time frame of easy money still, right? So there's the fiat money printer, which goes down to the funds, which goes down to the LPs, which goes to the VCs, which goes to the shitcoiners to pay for their Bitcoin fees, right? So it all flows from the money printer, because in a sane society, like,
shit flows downward. It's the expression, right?
and like in a sane society, like, of course nobody would spend thousands of Bitcoins on transaction fees like we had at the halving in 2024, right? So that's completely irrational behavior for people to spend Bitcoin transaction fees in order to get their JPEG faster than the other guy's JPEG onto whatever it is, the scheme BRC20. I don't know. So it is obviously behavior that is eliminated from the market over time as the subsidy of the money printer goes away, right? But you have these short-term periods of time where the market has not readjusted itself, right? And they actually do some damage. What eventually, and in the beginning, I was like, fuck it. Like, I was kind of like on the mechanic, Bitcoin mechanic, like side of things, where I was like, we should fix the filters. And that was my first thing. It's like, we should fix the filters. We should increase the dust limit. We should do something. And then, I began to realize that there is things that we can do. There are things that we can do, but these are some pretty severe nuclear options, right? And they require us to be willing to die on that hill. Like, we could soft forward Bitcoin and like reduce the block size. We could we could do some things with like removing the SegWit discount, for example, right? That was put in, which is what was initially exploited by the Taproot wizards, which is the fact that some part of the data is not counted towards the block size, and you can sneak your shit in there. That was not part of the social contract. That was one of the things that
an unforeseen consequence of a well-intended move.
Yeah. In hindsight, that was definitely a bad decision, because when the block size was increased, right? So I hate it when people say that they refuse to increase the block size. What if
it's increased it by 150%? Like, at least.
I think it's blocks are pretty much 3.5 megabytes.
Yeah,
each,
that's
right?
250%. Like, because the limit was 1 megabyte before. Right?
Yeah. And then the social contract was, we want to encourage the use of SegWit. Therefore, all the nodes agree to subsidize SegWit usage by discounting the size, right? This is like very important. Like, we wanted to encourage a specific type of transactions. Therefore, we agreed to share the burden of that transaction because we want people to move over to SegWit. And then the shitcoiners that figured out that they could use this to put their JPEGs on the chain. So we are encouraging the use of ordinals. with the SegWit discount. Like we are encouraging it.
No, we're encouraging the use of the false notion of ordinals
Yes,
because they
yes.
don't exist.
I know, I know, and of course,
and this is an important point
yeah,
because like we shouldn't give the scammers like this. We
true.
shouldn't encourage them more because what they are selling is complete vaporware. First of
Yeah,
all, you can't own a JPEG, but the thing is, the sats aren't ordered. They're only ordered on a third-party website that has
yeah,
nothing to do with
yeah,
Bitcoin. So
yeah,
it's all false. It's like
yeah.
someone claiming you can own a star in the Andromeda galaxy.
Yeah. No, it's the same
But
thing. It's
yeah,
it's
but it's not only like it's you can
yeah,
own a star on this third-party website that
yes,
shows a picture of the Andromeda galaxy,
exactly.
and it will clog people's nodes. Fantastic! Like
It's
it's
the oldest
so
scam in the
stupid.
book, man. Like they've done this scam before, exactly, like selling Moonland or something. You have a Moonland certificate, like try to enforce that without my
Yeah,
stupid like your piece of paper is
yeah.
worthless. And sats also don't exist, right?
No,
Sats don't
no,
exist.
exactly.
So
Except in your head.
UTXOs exist, but sats don't exist. So
Yeah.
your entire premise is false.
Eh,
And like that's also when I had this war with Bitcoin Magazine, which is really a shame because I had a really long and great relationship with Bitcoin Magazine because the Bitcoin Embassy was the first retailer of the Bitcoin Magazine. So in my office in 2014, 2013, I was selling physical copies of the Bitcoin Magazine like a newsstand, you know? So I knew David from way back. And that thing with the ordinals, that's what I think like really was bothering me so much. It's like it's somehow real OG legit Bitcoiners. And despite what you want to think about Bailey, right? He says some cringe things sometimes. He is like a fucking real legit OG Bitcoiner, and they were bamboozled into thinking that ordinals are good for Bitcoin, right? And like how exactly this cognitive dissonance appeared in their head where it's a good thing if all the shitcoins happen on Bitcoin, because I think it's probably like Ethereum derangement syndrome, where a lot of Bitcoiners, they hate Ethereum so much that they are happy to take away the shitcoinery away from Ethereum and onto Bitcoin. But at what cost? At the cost of decentralization of Bitcoin.
Yeah, we were back at the monetary use cases being the only legit use cases because everything else reduces its functional. I love the debate, and I was like, well, Bailey, one thing he tweeted once that all roads lead to Bitcoin. And my first thought is, and I think I tweeted it back like, yeah, but there are roadblocks. Like you can put up roadblocks, and this is exactly what you're doing by allowing the shitcoiners to be here.
Yeah, there's no need to take the long road, and a lot of people think
it's just a detour.
And a lot of people think like, oh, like shitcoining is a necessary part of every Bitcoiner's life.
Absolutely not.
No, it's not necessary.
I never had a shitcoin phase, by the way.
Me neither.
I had and $10. I spent $10 on shitcoin, $1 in each, and 8 of them went down and 2 went up. And I'm like, fuck this. I'm never gonna it's bullshit anyway. Like so,
and it's like, why? I a lot of normies, they don't need to get wrecked in order to understand Bitcoin. Like you can persuade them not to get wrecked. There's no it's not necessary for them to get wrecked, right? And I find it very, very sad because a lot of people also, they say like, well, if you're buying Trump coin, it's because you're fucking retards, and it's too bad for you. There's a lot of like victim shaming in Bitcoin where it's like, well, if you're investing in these shit coins, you're fucking retarded. Well, you have to see it from their perspective. Like they are not inside the maxi circles, and they don't necessarily understand, and they think that Bitcoin and crypto is one thing, and they heard about Bitcoin, they like Bitcoin, so everything must be the same. And they are getting defrauded by psychological abuse and manipulation by con men, right? And it's like, some of them are degen gamblers that know what they're getting into. It's kind of like the casino, right? So some people are professional poker players and they know what they're getting into, but some people are being, and like not everybody is high IQ, and not everybody has wisdom. And just because someone is a little stupid and like is not knowledgeable does not make it so okay for them to be scammed. And like the reason why it became so toxic, by the way, is because when you run a physical Bitcoin office, like I did from 2013 to 2017, and like I'm doing now in Costa Rica, you see the scam victims face to face, right? So the old lady who got bamboozled by her grandson into pulling the money and putting it into a meme coin, and it's all gone. Like, that exists, right? And people who thought, like, they saw an ad on Facebook to buy Trump coin, and a lot of people are fucking scared because their retirement savings are like going down, and a lot of old people also are very vulnerable to these high yield like scams, because they see their bank account and they're like, I have $200,000 in my bank account and I'm 67 years old. Like, I'm fucked, right? You are fucked, right, man? Try to live for 20 years with 200 grand. Like, it's just not going to happen. And then, I make like, 8% a year on my savings account, but the fucking money goes down 8% a year anyway. Everything's 8% more expensive a year anyway. So these people are like, I need to do something. I need to do something to increase my wealth. And, they see this scammer who's like, hey, like, you can make 5x with this fucking shitcoin. And they don't understand that they're being scammed. They're being manipulated. So I see that as being like evil, right? So scammers are evil people. They are corrupt in their souls, and they're taking money, and it's like, it's not okay. It's like, it's not fun. And it's not like, oh, well, like, are you against gambling? And it's like, the thing is, it's different with gambling because everybody understands a casino. Like most people understand the casino, like the risks and the rewards of the casino. Whereas these meme coins and shit coins and NFTs, they're being pitched as like, you remember when ordinals came out, people were like even Bitcoiners were like, these are going to be worth fucking, like, this rare sat is going to be worth like an insane amount, right? And they were selling sats for like 100 Bitcoins, right? Arguing that they were rare, where sats don't even exist. It's like, it's so dishonest. Anyway,
Yeah,
we agree on that. I know we agree on
right.
that. So
I'm going to rant for a little while now because,
Yeah.
like, I really want to go deep here and pick your brain on
Yeah.
a couple of things. Like, I love the rant. Like, first of all, let's go back to, because my train of thought came back. The organizational thing, like how companies that are too large become institutions in themselves and become bureaucratic. I think this has something to do with Dunbar's number. Like, so Dunbar's number is around 160 individuals, and that's the amount of people you can know personally and like remember who they are and have a personal relationship with. And it's about the same for humans as for our closest relatives in nature, like bonobos and chimpanzees and stuff like that, right? So and I think the reason that humans can form organizations that are bigger than that is because we can have these collective hallucinations or collective fantasies or whatever you call them, like religions, nation states, money, or fiat money, I should say, not proper money, but all of these frameworks we build around ourselves that we believe in, and therefore we can form larger groups, which may be evolutionary good for the group, but not necessarily for the individual in the group. So you may be part of a great nation, or like the Soviet Union was big as fuck for a while, but the people in it were all like living completely miserable lives. So I think like I saw that back in my old Fiat job, by the way. My last, don't laugh, but my last Fiat job was as an HR manager for a shipping company. And this was a company that was had just outgrown Dunbar's number. So like 200 or 300 employees. And I saw all sorts of growing pains that came with like the CEO not knowing everyone anymore. And I think maybe on a Bitcoin standard, it would be a lot harder to form these organizations because you don't need to. And you like organization will stay like 160 individuals or less. So that you get these smaller entities, but more of them and more distributed. I like distributed better than decentralized. Just as a word, I don't like the buzzword. I think decentralization is an unfortunate means to a greater end in Bitcoin, which is sound money. But do you think there's something there with the Dunbar's number, and that may be a force at play here?
Absolutely. And Dunbar's number is also, there's an evolutionary mechanism to it where, that's the amount of people in your tribe, in like an actual animal level tribe,
Exactly.
where you don't need to have these systematic processes like laws and money and institutions. If everybody knows each other, right? If everybody knows each other, then you can ad hoc improvise social relationships. And for sure in companies, it's the exact same process. And this is where it becomes very critical to have this hallucination that you talk about, this framework, right? This cognitive space that we all agree to share, or that we all share spontaneously. It needs to be simple, and it needs to be very, very strong and unbendable, so that the institutions are not necessary. This is why, for example, like the US was so successful as a nation for the longest time, because they had a simple constitution with simple principles of individual rights and freedoms. And like, that's something that we can all agree on. This small thing. It's like, I have rights, you don't have the right over me. It's very clear. And this is why Bitcoin scales really, really well, because it has very, very simple and unflexible rules. So Bitcoin as a social kind of like system can scale to a very large number of users, right? Because the rules are extremely difficult to change. Extremely, and that's good. Why has the US gone to shit? It's because the US Constitution is not being respected, right? It's not enforced.
Which is
right?
because of the Federal Reserve. As soon as you get control of the money printer, you care not who makes the country's laws, because you can bypass them, because you can fucking bribe everyone. And this is back to the shitcoins again. Like, the original shitcoin with a president on it is not fucking Trump coin. It's the dollar. And that's not even issued by a president. It's issued by I like to frame it as kleptocurrencies and cryptocurrencies. So the kleptocurrencies are the old fiats, and the cryptos are the cryptos, but they're the same thing. And by the way, number go equal is also someone scamming you, because on the free market, if there's actual sound money, number has to go up, because the prices of everything else drops. Like the easiest way of framing that, I think, is like, if you practice doing something, do you usually get better or worse at that thing? And it's obvious that you get better. So why aren't all prices dropping forever? Well, they are, if you use the correct denominator. So congratulations.
Absolutely. This is probably the biggest scam, the biggest psychological psyops of all time, is that people believe that prices going up over time is a natural phenomenon. It's like the winter, it's like summer, it's like the moon. It goes up, it goes down. Prices just go up over time. That's just the way it is, right? But that's not like, and when you explain to someone, it is the opposite is true, because like, if we have better technology to make the same thing, and better organizational processes, and like stronger connected trade ties, like obviously this fucking coffee cup should decrease. The price should decrease over time, because we're getting better and better at it, right? And we have technology that make it more efficient. So like, deflation is the natural state of prices. And unlike other guys, like I think Jeff Booth has this thing. It's like everything's going to exactly zero. It's not going to go exactly to zero, right?
No. It's marginal cost of production. Every good on the free, it approaches its marginal cost of production, which is trending towards zero. There was a book like Zero Marginal Cost, I think is the book, like written like 15 years ago maybe, about how everything is trending that direction. Never go to absolute zero, but it is trending in that direction.
And there's things that you can't produce, like you can't produce human time, and you can't produce beachfront real estate, right? So there are things that so money will always be like, even if there's deflation over time, the argument that money is going to disappear one day because everything's going to be free is nonsensical, because there will always be an original Picasso. And you say, well, I can 3D print a Picasso with AI. Yeah, but it doesn't matter. Like, I am willing to pay for the original Picasso, even though you can create the exact same thing, atom for atom. It will not have the same value as the original Picasso, right? There are things that people subjectively value and that are objectively scarce, like an original Picasso. There will only be one Mona Lisa, regardless of how many Mona Lisas you 3D print with AI. You know what I mean?
And only one time chain.
Yes,
only one
exactly.
Bitcoin. So this is, I love this, because this is something I've been thinking of for a long time and having difficulty explaining. But this is like one of the deeper parts of the rabbit hole. So you say like, imagine this world where everyone uses Bitcoin as the denominator, so they can actually see that everything is dropping towards zero except beachfront houses and stuff. So things that are actually scarce. But everything else is becoming abundant and available to people because the cost is so low, denominated in the right denominator, which is Bitcoin in sats. So and add to that this whole thing that the dichotomy between store of value and medium of exchange is false. So you have medium of exchange over time and space. In my mind, that world looks something like barter and people just being kind to one another actually goes up, and the number of transactions that need to be done at all, monetary transactions, the need for them goes away. Because I think, and this is such a weird mindfuck, because micropayments, everyone's talking about micropayments, and Lightning is great because you can zap people for notes and stuff. But micropayments, in my mind, is a very fiat-y thing. Like paying 50 cents to go to the bathroom at the central station will be replaced by some subscription model where you can go by any train anywhere in the world for the rest of your life with a one-time Bitcoin payment, because number go up. So I think like there's a scaling solution there, quote unquote solution there, in just money not being as needed. Because why was money invented or discovered? We'll get into that later. It was between people who didn't know each other. Like if you didn't trust the other guy, then money was a very good medium of exchange. And you didn't need it if you knew the other guy, because then you could just trust one another. And ironically, this don't trust verify that underpins Bitcoin has led us to a state where we can trust each other more. I mean, you, for instance, I've known you for a couple of years. We've only met in real life like a handful of times, and we've had brief conversations. We had conversations like this a couple of occasions. But still, I know you from your reputation online, and I would trust you with my savings. I don't think you'd fuck me over. Like, I know you that well. And this goes for so many other Bitcoiners. So, like, ironically, like this reputation we've gained from not compromising our principles has given us this amazing ability to trust one another. And like, I know that if I pay for a dinner with a bunch of Bitcoiners, or someone else will pay next time. Like we're inherently good to one another. And it's also because we know deep inside that what is good for the other Bitcoiner is good for Bitcoin. So we are doing it for egotistical reasons too. We're pumping our backs, but it's all, and all of a sudden you get to this insanely powerful utopian society where 8 billion people are helping 8 billion people with whatever they want. Like if we can get to that, like I this is why I'm bullish. This is why I think this is so powerful, because it just increases the value of being a human being, and it increases the value of other human beings around you, because you can trust them all of a sudden. You can, yeah. Well, what are your thoughts on this?
I think the the Maslow pyramid, right? Like the most basic needs of
hierarchy of
individuals,
needs, yeah.
The hierarchy of needs. I think what's going to happen is the things that are the most needful for people are going to become exceedingly cheap, if not free. And just an example I was thinking about when you were talking is water, right? So clean water. If you go to anybody's house and be like, hey, like my car broke down, can I have a glass of water? I've been, nobody's going to charge you for water, right? And water is like pretty much free at this point. But this is something that's exceedingly crazy in terms of human history, that clean water is available pretty much anywhere in the world for free, right? And then if you think about other stuff like food and lodging, the cost of food production should be very, very low in the future. The cost of lodging also should be very low in the future. And we're not talking about, of course, expensive beachfront real estate. We're talking about just like basic lodging, clothing, kind of like the basic needs. Like these prices are gonna drop. And I think you're right that on a long enough timeline, maybe not food, but also kind of food, like they will trend to a very, very, very low cost. And if they are exceedingly abundant, like these are the things that are creating conflict. Like when you're competing for food, and you're competing for lodging, and you're competing for water, and you're competing for like safety, or security. So these are the things that cause like human conflict. And I think what's going to happen is, as these things, the cost trends to very little, then we're going to be starting to think about, we're going to go up into the Maslow pyramid, and we're going to be starting to produce things that were previously incredibly hard and difficult to produce, right? So it's like now that these things are basically free, and the margin of return on like something is so low that who cares about reducing the price of corn 0.01% more than already is. Let's produce other things, and this might be technologies, this might be medical sciences, this might be space travel, this might be, I don't know, like building fucking cathedrals for no good reason other than because it's fucking awesome, or so I think like not everything is going to be free, but the stuff that we are competing over now will be very, very low cost, and then this will free up our time and energy to produce things that were previously thought to be impossible to produce, like life extension technologies. And I think space travel is probably like the better example. And like once it takes far less people to build housing, like what are people going to build? They're going to be fucking space rockets, because that's the new thing that's in demand. So this is how we evolve as a society, like stopping to focus our energy on low Maslow pyramid things, and we go higher into the more like, I don't know, like like extending life, for example, is not a priority for a peasant, right? So the peasant has no concept of maybe I can live to like 150 years. The peasant has the concept of I need to feed my family like the next 3 quarters. Subsistence lifestyle is basically like the next 3 months. In like a medium case scenario, and like the worst case scenario, it's like the crackhead on the street, which is like the next 6 hours, right? But as we extend, like, okay, I'm pretty good for the next 10 years, like I'm now let's think about more and more and more, and this is how we elevate ourselves above like our base nature of like subsistence. So this is why deflation is good. Like deflation allows us to elevate ourselves. And if the price of things are always going up, and dude, and I just thought about something, that the stupidest argument ever is the argument of like, well, if the price of things goes up, when the price of wages goes up also. Yeah, but the wages, your savings are still being devalued. So if you use that argument, it's like, okay, so you have to keep working forever just to catch up, right? You can never escape like the fiat slave mindset. You can never be like, all right, I have enough savings now, I don't need to work from 9 to 7 every single fucking day of my life, and like work on this hobby that I have an idea for this like new motor. I'm a mechanic, like I have an idea of how to make cars more efficient, but I don't have time to do that because I'm a fucking fiat wage slave, and I need to fucking work 9 to 7 every single day, including Saturday, in order to just keep up with the cost of living. So the idea that deflation is bad, I think, and I mean, I haven't, I stopped really getting deep in economics, like, years ago. Now I'm more into technology, but the idea that deflation is bad seems to be like it still is current, like mainstream economic theory. It's the
biggest lie ever told.
And it doesn't pass the smell test of the lay person. So it can only be created through a psyops, because if you ask the average person, it's like paying less for the same stuff over time, good or bad. Everybody that has a fucking brain is going to say, well, obviously that's good. Like it takes a lot of psyops to make it the official like dogma that no, actually it must be 2% more every year. That's like the necessary target. And that's like unchallengeable, right? Like our entire system is like, it must be between 1% and 3% more every single year. And you must accept that as being true. And people don't even think about that,
Hello there. I'm Knut Svanholm, and I'm an international village idiot and author. These are my books on Bitcoin. Bitcoin sovereignty through mathematics, Bitcoin independence reimagined, Bitcoin everything divided by 21 million, and Bitcoin the inverse of clown world. These are now re-edited, redesigned, and available from the Bitcoin Infinity store. I mean, look at that. Look at how your collection could look. It's upside down, but there they are anyway. But more than that, all of these books will be released for free, chapter by chapter, week by week on Noster. Also accompanied by a video that Luke and I will make talking about the ideas in the book, where we answer your questions, because you can sign up for the Bitcoin Infinity Academy and join courses for each and every one of the books and talk to us every now and then and get other perks like a free set of steak knives. So go to the Bitcoin Infinity store right now, get the books, sign up for the Academy. There's an economic phenomenon called Javons paradox. And it states that when prices go down, you think that people will buy like what they need in terms of that product and then stop buying it. But that's not true. They'll buy more of the product because they can afford more of it. It's very simple. Like the whole notion that prices have to go up in order for people to spend their money, it's bullshit.
Yeah.
And the best example in the real world, I think, is computers and the internet. Like a device like a mobile phone, which is like James Bond's wet dream just 20 years ago. Like we have everything, access to absolutely everything. You can manage your entire life and have all the world's entertainment in this thing, like books, CDs, and movies, everything. The fact that you and I can have a conversation without lag between like from on different sides of the planet, it's just insanely good. Like, and this is the thing. And this is just a tiny little taste of what's to come if you start using the right denominator.
And quality will go up. Like people will buy more, and people will buy. Okay, so
this computer thing, just to finish the point, like it happened despite fiat, because it's so powerful that despite all the fiat being printed that actually hinders the process, it happened anyway. And like when you remove that, like it's absolutely mind blowing what this can lead to. So
No, and absolutely, you're right. Like we have seen deflation for certain things where the technology innovation was so rapid and so like powerful that even despite fiat, it's still cheaper over time. Like, like the TVs, that we have in the random Airbnb that are fucking gigantic. Like that used to be, you are a multi fucking millionaire if you have a gigantic flat screen TV in your house. And now every single cheap Airbnb in the world has like 4 gigantic televisions in it. It's like a commodity. And to your point about quantity and quality and deflation, of course, okay, let's say that I'm a peasant and I spend $10 on, I don't know, cornmeal to feed my family. And now cornmeal is $1. I'm not going to buy 10 times more cornmeal. I'm going to buy ribeye steaks, and I'm going to be increasing my quality of life with higher quality goods. And when ribeye steaks are $1, I don't know what I'm going to buy, but I'm not going to buy 10 times more ribeye steaks, but I'm going to buy stuff that, I don't know, organic fruits. And I'm going to stop buying the fucking disgusting pesticide full fruit. And I'm going to be buying the organic fruits and so on and so forth. And then, once I've reached the highest quality of food, then I'm going to move to quality of housing. And then I'm going to move to quality of healthcare. And I'm going to get higher quality transportation. And then I'm going to get higher quality education, and I'm going to get higher quality entertainment, and so everything is just going to get, but I'm going to still be spending the same amount of money, right? So like, I'm still going to be spending money, but I'm going to be getting more for my money, and I'm going to be more happy, and I will save too, right? So there's like both sides. So let's say that everything goes down over time, like, yes, I might be spending the same amount of money because I'm buying higher quality goods, but there's like a max level of quality that you can get. You know what I mean? Like a ribeye. You know what I mean? Like
no.
Okay,
you can't get much better than a ribeye, and
right?
like you can buy a $30 bottle of wine, and you can buy a $3,000 bottle of wine. The difference is less than between a $30 and a $20 bottle.
Absolutely.
There's an absolute limit. Like life doesn't get much better. Like, I mean, we partied at Sailor's house. I mean, he still has to take a shit in the morning. Like, we're still human beings. It doesn't matter. Like, basic needs, but it's the Maslow thing. And I think that the thing we're getting away from is vulgo consumerism and like buying Chinese crap just for the sake of buying crap. And it's going to be so good. I think this is also one of the deeper thoughts I had. This is a saying that rings in the back of my head from my grandfathers. He used to say, that which you can do without you own. And I think there's a profound truth in that, because I think the opposite of quality is not lack of quality, it's equality. Like you can't have both. And I think like you get to this insight of that which you can do without your own. If you have money that's appreciating in value, you don't want to spend on shit. Like you want to spend on quality, what you actually need, and the urge to spend on other shit just goes away. The sell all your shares meme. Like That's what. And Jack Mallers, for instance, a great example of that, sitting in that empty closet and just, no, I'm not. I'm gonna stack. I'm not gonna fall for any of this fiat
Yeah,
bullshit. Like,
yeah, yeah,
I love that. I
yeah.
absolutely love that.
And this is very bullish for art. So like one of the reasons that we're talking is I think you were talking with Madex.
Yeah, we had a couple of conversations with
Yeah,
with Madex and Dave Bradley. So that's
yeah,
our other friends in Bull Bitcoin right now.
yeah,
We have many,
yeah, and
but
yeah, and Madex, he's basically my best friend. I've known him for a long time, and I I was never interested in art before meeting him and before kind of understanding his vision and his principles for art. And we talk a lot about cathedrals and the Renaissance and how we can. Why is this art so important to the human soul, first of all, and why is the art not happening today? And one thing, it's like I have this is the only piece of jewelry that I own, right? And it's a Madex Bull Bitcoin gold pendant.
oh
I have
yeah,
a 2007 RAV4 and a 1978 old fucking Land Cruiser. I don't own anything really expensive other than a laptop and a phone, but I do collect art. Like, I do collect art that I find to be very, very good out of principle, because this art is the only thing that's like worthy of my money, right? The art is the only thing that can't can't be easily reproduced. Like it's very, very difficult to reproduce like extremely good art versus like a fucking, for example, like a fucking JPEG. So thinking about like a second architectural and artistic renaissance, especially when you think about like increasing the quality of stuff, architecture and building, man. Like, the house that I'm in right now is just a typical Airbnb. I don't know how long it took to fucking build. Probably 3 months. I bang on the walls and it's, oh, my camera's automatically. I bang on the walls and like it's the construction's shit, and it's not gonna last. This house is not gonna last more than 20 years before it needs to be taken down for mold and shit like that. And how come you have these buildings in Europe, for example, or in Asia, that are built of stone and that have been built in the 15th century and that are still livable and great today? It's because they had sound money there, and they had very, very low time preference in their building, because they had sound money and because they thought on the very long term. So I'm very, very bullish on art and architecture. No more ugly fucking shit. No more cheap Chinese crap. And yeah, so this is the one of the topics I love the most about like high and low time preference. And I never really thought about that until reading Safedean's book, which was illuminating, and that was probably in 2018 or something. This is probably the line that I talk to people about, like, what's the social gain of Bitcoin? A lot of people are, and my immediate answer is to tell them, like, who gives a fuck? Right? It's good for you, so like you should use it. But people do want to hear, what's the social benefit of Bitcoin? And even though it makes me cringe to have to justify the social benefit of something, because who gives a fuck, right? If it's good for you, just do it. That's what I talk about. I talk about lowering people's time preference and what happens in a society where you have generalized low time preference. Well, you have cathedrals, you have monuments, you have the Mona Lisa and the David, you have gigantic stone aqueducts like the Roman Empire had, and you have generally just incredibly beautiful and high quality things. And is that not something that you want? Like, do you like seeing these condo towers that are fucking cheap and that are going to crumble in 70 years, and that are going to become low income housing? These modern condos that you have, they're all the fucking same. Every fucking city has the same goddamn fucking condo. Same fucking thing. It looks exactly the same. It's the same fucking building materials. It's the same architecture. And like, these are supposed to be modern, expensive things. And it's insane. Like, you'll pay $1 million for a condo. I guarantee you that in 50 years, this is going to be low income housing, right? This is going to be like a whorehouse, right? It's incredible.
No, and isn't it insane that we're personal friends of people like Madex and Fractal
Yeah.
and Crypt and
Yeah.
Apex and all the, like, these are the the Leonardo da Vinci's of our age, like,
Yeah, yeah,
and we're fucking
and
buddies with them. It's just insane, like, because they have this low time preference thing,
yeah,
uh, and I love it. Even though I would say that I can appreciate some high time preference art, like pop music. There are good pop songs, and like the in a way they're not low time high time preference because they're probably made by people who had a lifetime of experience producing this stuff.
yeah.
And I like to, this is another rabbit hole, but I like the term proof of results rather than proof of work, like,
I
because
think pop
like,
songs are fine. I don't.
yeah,
I don't. I like to listen to pop songs and like house music. You know, the thing
yeah,
is, every house music song is more or less the same song, right?
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
every pop song is more or less the same song. But it's enjoyable, right? It's like our bass. You know,
yeah,
the bass, the drum. You know, it's like kind of. Sometimes you don't want to elevate your spirits. You know, you don't
no,
always you don't want always want to have the ninth
you want,
symphony,
no,
which
you
you know
want the
there's only
Carnot.
one. Right. There's only one
Yeah,
ninth symphony of Beethoven.
yeah,
You know what
yeah,
I mean?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
none of the symphonies are alike. You know what I mean? They're all different. But all the pop songs are the same. But it's okay to have some cheap shit. You know, we can all
yeah,
have our guilty pleasures, but it's the illusion. It's the illusion of diversity of the cheap shit, right? It's like
yeah.
same thing with like the
No, no, no.
ordinals, same thing with all the shit coins, same thing with all the houses. It's like you have an illusion that you have some diversity,
Yeah.
but it's all the same, right? They're
It's
all
like
carbon.
200 different brands of cornflakes, like,
Yeah,
when
yeah,
you
yeah,
could have the ribeye steak, like.
yeah. Exactly, exactly.
So the way I look at time preference is like, if you take the shortest time preference, I prefer short or long, but this is just autist bullshit. But anyway, if you take the highest time preference possible, which is all your possessions are removed, so you're naked in the street and you have nothing. What is that? Like, that is a state of fear. And if you take the opposite of fear, what's the opposite of fear? Like, it's love. So the longer your time preference, like, time preference is
Yeah.
the process of civilization.
Yes.
Delaying gratification is the Robinson Crusoe example of,
Yes.
like, saving up fish so that you can eat while constructing the fishing net in order to
Mhm.
catch more fish per time unit in the future. That is the process of civilization. There is no other. Like, the opposite of that is just bashing the other guy over the head with a stick and taking his stuff. So, and that's the highest time preference there is, the
Yeah.
crime. So
Yeah.
it's the dichotomy is fear and love. It's the
Yeah.
same thing as a high and a low time preference. And I think this
I,
is
I
just
use that a lot.
yeah,
I use that a lot here because where I live, it's a very kind of hippie, kind of pagan almost,
like El Sonte, I guess.
like El Zonte, right? So
Yeah,
it's yoga, it's surf, it's nature. People who are here, they are, I guess it's kind of a weird left libertarian type of people where everybody's like anti-pharma. It's kind of like Robert Kennedy style, you know, like Maha. You know, everybody's kind of like anti-big pharma, anti-capitalist, but also they're all entrepreneurs and they all make money. So it's kind of like weird. But I use this example a lot because we are facing this political situation of gentrification, right? Where there's a lot of foreigners that are moving here, and people are anti-capitalistic because they think it's bad for the environment. But I explain to them like if I am a wealthy individual and I move to Costa Rica and I'm buying 1,000 acres of land, what is going to be my desire to do with this land? I am going to preserve it. I'm going to preserve it because I don't need. And then if I am a peasant and I have 1,000 acres of land, what am I going to do? I'm going to cut it all down. I'm going to sell the wood. I'm going to burn it, and I'm going to make a field for my cows. Right. So I use this example of, you know, it's kind of like the fear and love and subsistence and higher achievement. And it's like if we're all rich, we're not going to be fucking building condo towers on the land that we buy. And you know, I also use this example with people here, and it's like for me the ultimate luxury to own is a Jaguar. But I tell them I'm not talking about a car. I'm talking about an actual fucking Jaguar. Like, I want to have 10,000 acres of jungle and I want to have Jaguars live on my land. And I derive an insane amount of pleasure from knowing that I have Jaguars in my backyard. Like, and that's because I'm able to value something so abstract as like the fact that I'm allowing the Jaguar to exist and to do its life And without me protecting him, he would not exist, because someone would have cut the forest down so that I can make a field. I derive an incredible amount of pleasure from that. And this is like the state of love that you're talking about. Like I'm
No,
I'm
this is, yeah, sorry for interrupting,
yeah,
but I get that, like, this is the typical lefty derangement thing, because they
yeah,
think they're against capitalism when what they're actually against is crony capitalism.
yeah,
Because we
yeah,
never had capitalism. We
yeah,
never had falling prices. It's
yeah,
always been a centrally planned economy where someone
yeah.
has access to a money printer. So we never seen actual capitalism. We
They're
never
against
seen
fiat.
this. We've
They're
never
against
seen the
fiat.
state of love. We've never seen
Yeah,
this state of that which you can do without your own. We haven't seen this greater civilization, but we're
yeah,
about to, and
yeah.
it's
And,
fantastic. We have a front row seat. It's just amazing.
and here, when we try to orange pill this kind of community, right? So the kind of like Bitcoin jungle and yoga alternative community, this is very interesting for me, because the argument that people have is against money itself, right? So you explain to someone, you don't need to explain to someone here that fiat money is evil. They already know that, right? They understand, but in their mind, they have made the connection that money itself is evil. Therefore, the solution is barter, right? So a lot of people
Yeah.
here, they are for barter, and then and then you have to explain, like, I understand where every argument you have against money is a good argument, but that's because you don't understand sound money, and specifically censorship resistant sovereign wealth like Bitcoin. So I don't have to argue against fiat and credit cards here. I have to argue against barter. And like, well, like, sure, and barter works, as you say, with like kind of like a Dunbar's number type of situation. But like, okay, like, we if you want to barter, that's completely fine. But fucking give me your iPhone,
Yeah, no,
give me
no
your car,
civilization. No
right?
civilization was ever
Uh,
built without money. Like there
your
was never a barter civilization, because
your
it
kids will
requires a
die. Your
mutual coincidence of
Yes,
needs, and it never
yes.
happens. Like
Your
so,
your children will die at childbirth and be
yeah,
malnourished, and you will live to be 55 years old if you're lucky, and that's totally fine. And I'm not. You have to explain. Like, I'm not talking about having, because, and then they'll think like, I don't need fiat Chinese shit. I'm like, I'm not talking about fiat Chinese shit. I'm talking about like high quality food and high quality shelter and high quality and efficient transportation. So yeah, people have been psyops into thinking capitalism is bad, and the
yeah.
other, and then so what we need is radical utopian communism and barter. And it's like, that is a destructive mindset, right?
Super destructive. Like
Yeah,
these people think money is the root of all evil, when it's
yeah,
actually the other way around. Evil is the root of all money,
yeah,
except Bitcoin.
yeah,
Because Bitcoin, in a way, I think it's degrading to Bitcoin to call it money, because it's
yeah.
more like it's just a way for us to communicate love, like and to actually be good people to one another. And we have a mathematical formula for
Hmm.
expressing who we truly are, and our true potential. I think it's just insane. So
Yeah.
yeah, let's go there. Was Bitcoin an invention or a discovery? This is something you
Ah,
tweeted the other day, so we should have
yes,
that battle. Like, let's go.
yes. My contention is that Bitcoin was invented, and sometimes, I understand that it's not, and it's nothing against Satoshi. And when people say that Bitcoin was discovered, I understand that it's not like an insult to Satoshi, but I kind of get triggered on that, because I see I see Satoshi's genius as being the person that created all the components and made them come together, like an engineer who's designing a motor, right? So like the underlying principles of like a motor, like thermodynamics, were discovered, but the motor itself was created and engineered. And the distinction that I bring is basically that Bitcoin does not exist in nature. Bitcoin is not a natural phenomenon. It's definitely like a man-made phenomenon, right? So the idea, for example, and one of the most mind-blowing revelations I've had with Bitcoin was, okay, so how do you prove that something does not exist? It's something that in nature you cannot do, right? Because the space is infinite. And like, how do I know that the spaghetti monster is not right behind me? I can't verify that the spaghetti monster is not like right above my head. How do I prove a negative? I can't prove a negative. So what Satoshi did was he created a box, which is the blockchain, and each block, and he said, for the purpose of us talking about money, this box is the entire size of the universe, and you can download it on your computer. And if there is no double spend transaction inside this box, we agree that it does not exist, right? So what Satoshi did is like, we are able to prove the absence of a double spend by reducing the size of the universe when it comes to money to this little block and this other block and this other block. Bitcoin did not exist before Satoshi invented it. Although I will concede that like the underlying principles and digital scarcity also did not exist. So the other counter argument is that, okay, so Bitcoin was invented, but digital scarcity itself was discovered. No, digital scarcity did not exist. It did not exist before. We needed to engineer it. And not only we need to engineer it, we need to maintain it, right? Because if Bitcoin crumbles, digital scarcity will, it's not like it's still going to be there after Bitcoin crumbles, and then we can rediscover it again. So my contention is that Bitcoin did not exist before Satoshi. Digital scarcity did not exist before Satoshi. And yes, some of the mathematical principles of Bitcoin exist. I think mathematical principles exist, right? And I think physics exists outside of us, right? So if we die, if humanity just all dies, gravity, thermodynamics will still be, in mathematical patterns will still exist, but Bitcoin will not. All right.
All right, so devil's advocate back here. I
Yes.
love the whole box thing. It's very reminiscent of Gigi's fantastic, like the map is now the territory. Like Bitcoin is the first thing ever where the map defines the territory and not the other way around. And I love that way of looking at it. So for me, the reason I've been promoting the discovery thought is that it helps I think that kind of framing helps the no coiner differentiate between Bitcoin and crypto. Because saying that it's an invention implies that it can be something better can be invented, or that it can be improved upon, and like in ways that Bitcoin can't really be improved upon. And as you say, if Bitcoin stops functioning for some reason, let's say the ordinals people actually win this war and it becomes unusable, and then people stop using it, then we can't really replicate the experiment, because everyone would have insider information about the first time around. So this immaculate conception, the first 10 years, it's very important that they played out the way they did. Like if I use a towel before I take a shower, I get a very different result than if I use the towel after I take a shower. So the order of events is what makes it unique. It needed this immaculate conception and this way of spreading to the people, because otherwise, like it's just another shitcoin. So that's where the discovery part comes into me. Like that's why I choose to view it as a discovery. And you can also say that, like, do numbers exist? No, not really, but they're in our heads. The sats, do they exist? No. There are UTXOs on the time chain, but the actual ability to move the sats are in our heads. Like everything in Bitcoin is probabilistic. We say that we own them because we know that the probability that someone else has the same key is so low. And we say that there are 21 million of them because we know that the probability of it changing at any time in the future to a different number is also so low, because it's in the collective consciousness now that how it works. So all of it is this. It's between the worlds. It's bridging the objective and the subjective. It's bridging the realm of the mind with the realm of what we call objective reality. It's some type of bridge between the two. And you can also view it. This is also an argument for discovery. Bitcoin has always existed since the Big Bang, or whatever bang, and since the dawn of time. Let's just say that. And it's just that the hash rate was 0 up until 2009. So you could view it that way. Like every component was there. It's just that the hash rate was 0. But my main like practical argument and like real world argument for framing it as a discovery is because I think it helps no coiners differentiate between the real thing and the shit.
For sure it does, and it's because the other explanation about the immaculate conception and what makes Bitcoin scarce is very complex. It's like, in order to understand like why why can't someone copy Bitcoin A and make Bitcoin B and like make it work, right? And the Immaculate Conception is very hard to grasp for a lot of people, where not only there's like, so not only you have like this historical figure which basically sacrificed himself for the greater good, which is Satoshi, right? Because you know,
Yeah.
I kind of believe that he or they, most likely there is a he and there is also a they. That's what I think. Like there's one Satoshi, but there was also a group, but one of the guys was actually Satoshi. That's kind of like the way I see it. And what is the likelihood that he or they decided not to spend their Bitcoin or to deliberately burn their keys, like and not not do like a pre-mine? It's very 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 low. And then, as you say, Bitcoin was not anti-fragile at birth, right? It was very difficult, and it would have been, if you launch a shitcoin today, everybody's going to attack it with hash rate and all sorts of things. And it benefited from this historical point in time where it went under the radar and was allowed to organically develop an immune system. Because why do people have pre-mines and all that, all this centralizing aspects, is because you need to inoculate it at birth with like a foundation, which is going to whatever build it. And then you also had like this unique moment in time with the cypherpunks that are willing to work for free on something and willing to die on this hill, like the Hal Finneys of the world and the Martin Malmy of the world, and like all these guys. So, and also you have like this very intricate play of economic interests that are decentralized, and hash rate and node and businesses and all of that. You can't copy that into something else. And it's like really, really difficult to explain. I did a talk in Calgary in 2020. I need to find the video where it was like, these are the 5 layers of Bitcoin scarcity, just to finally kill that argument, which is like, well, why can't we just create a better Bitcoin in the future? And also, if you fork Bitcoin, it does not, and that's another thing, it's very hard to explain. You can't hard fork Bitcoin. You cannot. It is not possible, because the other Bitcoin will exist still, right? So what you can do is you can airdrop a new token onto a new blockchain with the same balances, with the same UTXOs, right? You can copy the UTXO set, dump it on a blockchain, and you can call it Bitcoin, but it will not be Bitcoin, because it will not be retro-compatible with the original Bitcoin. And I'm diverging a little bit here, but that's my main argument against raising the block size. That's my main argument, right? Because could we actually raise the block size to 10 megabytes? I mean, in terms of computing resources, like, and so the argument is moot from the beginning, right? It's like, well, if it was a soft fork like SegWit, well, I'm like I'm not for it. I don't want another hard fork. I don't want another block size increase, even with a soft fork. But if it's a hard fork,
we can decrease.
We can, and that are just the fact that we can decrease it with a soft fork, that makes it a possibility that I can entertain in my mind. But a hard fork for me, it's none, because every single person needs to be retro-compatible from the beginning. There is a social contract in Bitcoin, right? That is, if you bought Bitcoin in 2011 and you put it on a fucking paper wallet, you expect to be able to spend it in 2050 without needing to have like that weird airdrop where you split your coins and all of that. So it's very, very, very difficult to explain why Bitcoin is unique to people. And and that's why we make these shortcuts. Like when someone is trying to, I'm explaining it to someone, instead of explaining all of this thing, I'm just going to show them a chart of Bitcoin versus shitcoin. It's like, why should I buy Bitcoin and not the other ones? Well, here's the chart of Bitcoin. Here's the chart of all the shitcoins. So and like it took, like, how long do you think it took me to understand why Bitcoin is unique? I mean, for sure, like from 2013 to 2017, I didn't know how Bitcoin worked. Like, it was only the block size wars that really, like, how is Bitcoin governed? Like, who controls Bitcoin? That question, is it the miners? Is it the nodes? I mean, it is the nodes, but it's not only the nodes. It's the nodes and the miners, and it's also the economic nodes. And like, what exactly defines an economic node? And then at a certain point, you realize, okay, it's the fact that the node is receiving payments on a continual basis that makes it an economic node. Like a holder, it's not exactly an economic node if you stop validating payments coming in, you're not validating. So all of that, and like the whole interplay of like finance and engineering and core developers, and like, do the core developers control Bitcoin? I mean, no, but if everybody auto updates because there's one implementation, then kind of, yeah, so it's very complex, very, very complex. And then on top of that, you have, so that's why Bitcoin is like scarce, because of this interplay. And on top of that, you have like the whole like mystical birth and the ways that shitcoins are. It's so hard to explain to people, but like, at least, and one of the things that I'm the most grateful for the soft fork wars and the fork wars is like, we have a proof of Bitcoin's resistance, right? Because people say, all right, what if BlackRock wants to fork Bitcoin and increase the size of Bitcoin? Well, I mean, you may not know that, but in 2017, we had our own BlackRock, and it was Coinbase, right? So Coinbase was way more powerful back then.
Yeah,
we had Coinbase, we had BitPay, we had Blockchain.info, we had Kraken, we had this guy, and we had like the 30 top exchanges, which are like 95% of all trading volume in the world. And then we have 90% of the hash rate in the world. And then you have all these influencers and podcasters and whatnot that are for this thing. And then they were not able to fork Bitcoin to double the block size, which like is not a huge deal compared to doubling the amount of Bitcoins, because the 21 million is the social contract. The block size is not part of the social contract. The block size is a technical thing, right? So like the social contract is that it's decentralized, and there's 21 million, and that nobody can, like, that's for the social contract. If Bitcoin is still decentralized at 8 megabytes, and there's no and we had a soft fork to raise it to 8 megabytes, I don't think we would be massively breaking the social contract. But still, they were not able to do that, right? So it's impossible that they're going to be able to do that with a hard fork. And then, there's nothing, my God, there's nothing I would love more than a confrontation with BlackRock. It will suck.
I love this so much, Francis, because my story is exactly the same. I don't view myself as understanding Bitcoin until like the block size wars, and the outcome of that was like, holy shit, it actually fucking works.
Yeah.
And like, hang on a minute, the miners aren't mining for Bitcoin, they're mining for blocks, and they're totally the slaves of the node. Like, what is it? And I think this is why Riga 2019 was so special, because all of us that were there, and not at your random crypto conference, but went to this Bitcoin only thing. By the way, Bitcoin first means shitcoins, and so we were all there, like all of the like the people that have, there's so many people that were there that are still as based now as they were back then, and just walk the walk all the way through. And by the way, for you, my mind is all over the place here, but I'm going to go back to the discovery invention argument. Like one of my most popular quotes is from my second book, and it's called The One Shot Principle. Is my pretentious attempt at explaining why Bitcoin is unique in one short, a couple of sentences. And it's something like absolute mathematical scarcity in a sufficiently distributed digital network was a discovery rather than an invention. It cannot be replicated by people aware of this discovery, because the very thing discovered was resistance to replicability itself. That's how I put it, and like that's how I view it. Bitcoin might not have been discovered, but engineered. But the resistance to replicability, that is what was discovered. You cannot replicate resistance to replicability. Either it works or it doesn't. Like it's only a one-time thing. So that's What do you think of that?
Oh, I totally agree, and that's also why, like, during the fork wars and after, why I'm so, like, we only have one shot. Like, we can't create Bitcoin again, and like we all have ideas of, if we had been Satoshi, what would we have done? I have an idea of what I would have done. I would have had a much less aggressive reward schedule, right? I would probably have had the reward schedule be softer over time. And because we have 20 million coins now, right? So like the subsidy is kind of like gone. So transaction fees are pretty high. And I think that Satoshi, I think the reason why Satoshi did this actually is because he understood that we needed to bootstrap rapidly to protect the network. And what I would tell Satoshi is basically like, by the way, like nobody's really not going to give a fuck for like the first 10 years. So, like there's not going to be state level attacks for like the first 10 years. Maybe, but like, and the reason why the block reward is decreasing is also because you like want people to come in early, right? You want to incentivize people to come in early with a block reward that's decreasing because you know that it's going to be much scarcer in the future. And I would have told Satoshi, people will mine Bitcoin for fun. Like we don't need to artificially incentivize miners to join the network so early on. I mean, this is just like my contention, but you know what? Like we can't fucking change anything that Satoshi fucking decided. You know what I mean? And it's
No.
like, is it perfect? Like it's perfect because it exists, right? So it is perfect in that sense because it exists and it works. So
I love the framing. It never needed to be perfect. It just needed to be good enough to last forever.
Yeah. No, exactly. And it needed to be good enough to last until it became too big to be attacked, right? We needed like, and when did it become resistant to attacks? Well, at least by 2017, we know that, right? So by 2016, 2017, it was big enough to resist attacks. If the fork wars had happened in 2013, there's like a much higher chance. Who knows, right? Who knows? Who knows what would have happened? But it was strong and resilient enough, and that's the replicability argument, right? Which is what people don't get. It's like we needed to have this period of organic growth that you can't replicate, right? And you cannot bootstrap a blockchain without centralization. That's just not possible.
No,
right?
and this is why Mars coin won't work, for instance.
You cannot
bootstrap a new Bitcoin on Mars. I just don't buy that.
No. Of course not. So like we have one shot, and everybody accepts this at like the gravity pull of Bitcoin. People come to accept it if they're honest and if they are self-aware. A great example of that is like there's a famous Nostr developer. I'm not going to name him, but there's a famous Nostr developer. And I've been hanging around Nostr developers more and more. And a lot of them are like total commies, right? They are not at all. They're not at all like based like Bitcoiners are. And they're all great people. They're all like, they're kind of like the left-wing activist types, Antifa types, and that kind of stuff that are into decentralized networks for other reasons. But this guy, we were just 3 weeks ago, we were at this conference in Costa Rica, and he said something that was so interesting, which is aesthetically, I am so for Ethereum. And the guy has like purple hair, and he's a great guy, but he said something like, I associate aesthetically and culturally with Ethereum, but I cannot help being a Bitcoiner, right? I just cannot help being a Bitcoiner, no matter like, it's just, and it's just everybody kind of like realized that one day. It's like, it's the one, and it doesn't matter if there's the smart contracts are different or this doesn't work the way that I want. And it's like autistic nerds are kind of like, oh, well, Ripple is better because you can have this. Like none of that matters, right? None of that matters. What matters is that there's only one that can actually work over time and like resist attacks, and you either submit to that or you get destroyed. And another great quote about that is like, Paul Stortz. So Paul Stortz is kind of a friend of mine, and I've known Paul forever. Like, I think the first time I met Paul was in 2014, and we drank together like back in the day. So we go way back, and I actually really like the guy. Like, I really like him. I think he's very smart, and I think he's probably one of the people in the entire world that understands Bitcoin consensus the best. I have no doubt that if he really truly wanted to force his soft fork on Bitcoin, I think that he is probably knowledgeable of how the loopholes of consensus, the loopholes of USF and the loopholes of URSF and all of that dynamic. Like he's very, very smart. I have no opinion on BIP 300, by the way. I am absolutely neutral on it. But not, and that's the way that consensus works, by the way. It's like, if I'm neutral on something, it's not going to happen, because I need to be able to I need to be willing to die on that hill, right? And I will die on the hill of a speedy trial, right? I will die on that hill. It doesn't matter how much I want confidence, right? Or CTV. I will die on the hill if you try to sneak that in. And if someone tries to force it, I will URSF it. But he says something: money is the strongest network effect, because if you're on the wrong network, you die. And that is the difference between languages, social media, HTTP versus HTTPS. What happens if you learn the wrong language? Like, you're not going to die if you don't speak English. You're still
I
going to
love that
survive,
framing. I love
right?
it. Money
Right.
is the strong, because if you're on the wrong one, you die. Like, I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Because money
Yeah.
is like, it was Hans Hermann Hoppe that said, it's back to that Hoppe quote. It's the best available insurance for
Yeah.
uncertainty, like
Yeah.
hedge against uncertainty.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what it is. Like, and
Yeah.
that's why the dichotomy medium exchange over time and space, like why it's false, because
Yeah.
it needs the overtime factor to be able to be the overspace factor, and
Yeah.
vice versa. It doesn't
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
if you can't send it, and it
Yeah.
doesn't work if it doesn't hold its value. Like, it's
Yeah.
super simple.
Yeah, and that's the art. That's like the praxeologic, practical argument for Bitcoin maximalism, is that because the risk of being on the wrong network is so high, the default behavior of everybody is going to go on the safe network, right? The one that is the one that's the least likely to cause me to have zero money and like not be able to feed my family. So the safe bet is always Bitcoin. And then another revelation also in my Bitcoin maximalist journey is I used to be a praxeologic Bitcoin maximalist, where Bitcoin maximalism is inevitable because of economic forces and because of human rationality and human behavior, right? Human behavior will lead people to go to Bitcoin, and everything else is a distraction, because the market will essentially correct itself by moving to Bitcoin over time. And then the other side of it was actually, and this is like where the toxicity of like bull Bitcoin and all of that came in. And it's like, it's not only a practical argument, there is a ethical argument that we must destroy the shitcoins as fast as possible. Like, they must be destroyed for ethical grounds, because the existence, and that argument came. I was at a party in like 2018, and someone, I can't remember exactly the situation, but someone told me like, all right, so I'm talking about shitcoins, and someone's like, all right, so you say they're all Ponzi schemes because everybody wants to like just pump them and dump them, and like, why is Bitcoin not a Ponzi scheme? Like, don't you just want to like hold the Bitcoin and also like sell it when the price is high? Like, isn't that what you're talking about when you're talking about, NGU and about deflation? And then I was like, I didn't really have like a really resounding argument against that, because it is true that I want the price of Bitcoin to go up, and that I inevitably at one point intend to spend it. And then what I realized, and I started thinking about like the dynamics of that, and the first thing I realized was, I don't want to buy Bitcoin early because I want to sell it for high. I want to buy Bitcoin early because the amount of time. Think about a salary, right? Let's say you make 50 grand a year. A Bitcoin is 100 grand. I don't know. These are not the right pleasing examples, but it's going to take you like 2 years to acquire a Bitcoin today. In the future, it's going to take you 10 years to acquire a Bitcoin on salary. So I can acquire a Bitcoin for 10x less time today, and I'm going to want that Bitcoin in the future. So I don't buy Bitcoin to sell it. I buy Bitcoin because it's cheaper for my current self than for my future self to acquire, right? And I tend to spend it on goods and services in the future, not to trade it for fiat. And then the other thing about capitalism is, like, in capitalism, and I realized this really early on because I started to do currency trading at the Bitcoin embassy, like cash to Bitcoin, and I got into currency exchange desks. And for a while, we were like running a traditional currency exchange kiosk with euros and pounds and US dollars, Canadian dollars, and all that. And in capitalism, in a purely capitalist system, every trade is mutually beneficial, provided that it's not fraud, provided that the information is like, let's agree that the information is free and there's no deception. Every trade is mutually beneficial. There's no winner, there's no loser. Everybody gets what they want because it's consensual, right? And I thought about currency exchange trades. There is always a loser in a currency exchange trade. There is no scenario where someone is going to win and both are going to win. One currency is going to go up, the other is going to go down. Someone's going to end up being a loser. So if capitalism is good because both parties benefit, and because both parties benefit, the amount of wealth increases in the world through a trade, generally speaking, it's a good thing, right? But a currency exchange trade is inherently evil. It's inherently destructive because one person is going to lose every single time, right? There's no scenario where both people will. If I trade euros for dollars and one of them goes up, the other one goes down, and that's it. So currency exchange trades are the only type of trade that's like widespread, which is inherently bad, where someone will lose. So we must eliminate currency. There must be only one currency in the world. There must be, right? Otherwise, we are letting this kind of like evil, destructive behavior continue. So as long as there are multiple currencies, there are transactions that are win-lose. If there is only one currency in the world, all transactions are win-win. And a win-win transaction is something that creates, and a win-lose transaction is something that destroys. And ultimately, regardless of the morality that you have, whether it's Christian, whether it's, I believe that the root of morality is creation versus destruction, right? Destruction is bad, creation is good, period.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So like, regardless of religion, and that's why, like, an atheist, I think you have also strong opinions on that, and I think we're 2.5 hours in, so maybe we won't get too deep on this.
we go Noster and the God debate next time. I think.
Right.
But I would say I have a different.
Destruction is a universal. I think it's a universal moral principle. Like, destruction is bad, creation is good.
Yeah, I think, like, just a short one on the atheist thing. I am not saying that I absolutely think that there is no God. Like, most people would probably call me an agnostic, but I think that's a bit of a cop-out. I would say that I'm an atheist in the same sense that I'm a libertarian. Like, I don't want others to impose ideas upon me. I want to come to my own conclusions. I want to be in the driver's seat. So that's the thing. If there's and the word God to me has so many different definition. Every person I talk to has their own definition of it. So I think the word is kind of redundant, like whatever that is. And I think morality, by the way, Hans Hermann Hoppe, back to him again, the argumentation ethics perfectly frame it. Like, it's if you argue with someone about something, you argue to come to a conclusion over a conflict over something. So it's communicating rather than using violence. And if one party chooses to discard the argument and whatever conclusion you came to, and violates you instead. So, for instance, if you have an argument with a taxman, or during the lockdowns when you tried to leave Canada, we'd have an argument with some of the mask mandate officers or something. If you can have a sound argument and the guy can agree with you, but if they still choose to enforce the shit, it's not an argument anymore, it's mockery, and therefore unethical. So, and this is where absolute property rights come from. And I think, like, we have, as humans, we have two ways of resolving conflict. One is words and communication, speech, and the other is violence. And this is the civilized way, and this is the barbaric way. And right now, with inflationary currencies, there's always a percentage of aggression in every single trade we make because someone has access to the money printer. And Bitcoin removes that completely. You're sure you have to pay the miners a tiny fee to facilitate the thing, but it's transparent. There's no fraud. There is no aggression. There is no one that can take advantage of anyone else. And it's so much more powerful than people think, because 5,000 years of history have been tainted by some people elevating themselves to say that they're kings or they're central bankers or they're closer to God, whatever you choose. It's all from this people saying that they're better than others. Like, that's where evil is the root of all money, like, except Bitcoin. That's the way I view it. So like, but the
way that I see, like, the moral argument there is also, if something allows you to liberate more time for yourself, it is inherent. And that's also the definition of wealth that I try to explain to people, like, what is wealth? What constitutes wealth? Wealth is basically the time that you create for yourself, for your future self, right? So let's say that wealth must be measured in terms of your time. Like, how much time would it take for me to create a sandwich from scratch? Like, years.
Yeah.
Right? Like it takes
Yeah.
years to create a sandwich from scratch. You know, like it's probably not even. And with enough time, you can do anything, right? So it's like, if I was living a million years, like, of course I can create a computer from scratch. Like, I'm going to be, I'm going to be creating glass, I'm going to be creating plastic, and I'm going to be tinkering, and eventually I will be able to create a computer. But that's
I would say you would create nothing. Like, okay,
right.
Sorry for interrupting, but this is one of my arguments against God. If you were immortal and indestructible, you would never have an incentive to do anything, because you could always postpone everything to the day after.
Of course. Like, if I was immortal, it probably would take me like a trillion years to create.
And you wouldn't need the sandwich in the first place.
I definitely would not need the sandwich. But yeah, so like, wealth is hard to explain, and like, I find that explaining wealth in terms of time and explaining the fact that, like, do you want more time or less time? Is it a good thing if more people have time to do other things? And this also comes back to this idea of like moving away from the Maslow pyramid. It's like, it's objectively good, right? Like, deflation is objectively good because it allows us to devote more times to other things. And then, and again, I'm also like a libertarian, so I don't really give a fuck what you do with your time. Like, as long as it doesn't fucking harm me, as long as it doesn't create a system which systematically oppresses me. And, going back to like also one of my first like red pill. So when I got into Bitcoin, I was still a normie. When I got into Bitcoin, I was like a libertarian normie, right? So, I'm like your typical like conservative Republican style, libertarian style normie, and I didn't really understand fiat and like what I was doing. It's only like maybe 2014, 2015 where I understood that by holding, when the government creates money and I decide to hold it, I give value, I give purchasing power to the government, right? So I allow the government to spend that money purposefully. And we finance the government in two ways. We give money to the government with our taxes, and we hold the government money, giving it, because we accept to be the bottom of the Cantillon pyramid, right?
Yeah, we're allowing them to print it. So whenever we hold it, they're printing it. So we're effectively stealing from our children by holding fiat.
Yes, we are stealing from our children, and we're financing the government. And what is the government doing with our money? They're killing people. They're oppressing people. So my framing, and I was like maybe 25 at the time or something, like 10 years ago. I was like, if I hold government money, I'm complicit. I cannot claim to not be complicit. Like, I know that my money is being used. I know that my time and my energy is being used to kill people, and I have the choice to not do that by opting into Bitcoin, and I'm not taking that choice. So I went full Bitcoin and I didn't have to, I'm an OG, but by the way, I was a student at the time. Like, I was getting paid like $20 an hour. So I wasn't like making a big move in Bitcoin. I was just like, I'm just not going to hold fiat anymore. Right. I will not hold fiat. And that's also the funny argument. It's the stupidest argument to me, that you shouldn't spend Bitcoin. Oh, really? What should I spend? Fiat? So if I shouldn't spend Bitcoin because Bitcoin is going to be worth more in the future, why the fuck should I be holding fiat in the first place? It makes zero sense, right? So when you're spending, you're always spending an opportunity cost, right? So if I'm spending fiat, I'm spending I could have bought Bitcoin with the fiat that I spent anyway. So I decided to go full Bitcoin only. I'm like, I'm going to spend Bitcoin. I've been spending Bitcoin forever. But guess what? I've also been earning Bitcoin, right? So what matters is that positive Bitcoin cash flow. Just like, and what's interesting with Bitcoin is, like, when you spend Bitcoin, you need to fucking make fucking money fast because if you want to make it back. So there's two things that happen when you live on a Bitcoin standard. A, you spend less, and B, you earn more, right? So it's like, but the argument of like, don't spend Bitcoin because it's going to be worth more is completely ridiculous, because whenever you're spending fiat, you're spending Bitcoin opportunity costs. You could have bought Bitcoin with the same Bitcoin. So that's like a ridiculous argument. And like, yes, maybe it's like less convenient. And by the way, why? Okay, so in Costa Rica, we have this thing where we created this Bitcoin to fiat rail where you can, let's say like 500 merchants accept Bitcoin directly. We also have this fiat rail where you can spend Bitcoin and the merchant receives fiat automatically. So even if my mechanic doesn't accept Bitcoin, I can still spend my Bitcoin and he gets fiat. And this is what I had built with bills in Canada, where the reason why I decided to go on a full-blown Bitcoin standard is because I discovered this trick, which is you can have negative fiat with a credit card. That was my first, like, I was like, so because I got debanked basically. Like in 2015, I got debanked. I was doing like local Bitcoin trading, and then my personal bank accounts were shut down, but my credit card, ironically, was kept alive. So the bank was allowing me to have a credit card, but not a bank account. And I was able to pay my credit card with Bitcoin through bills because bills allowed credit card payouts. So I was like, oh, you mean I can live on negative fiat? So I don't have the taint of owning fiat, but I can still spend fiat by owning Bitcoin. And like that's kind of like the thing. And that's also the thing that I'm doing in Europe, by the way. Like in Europe, we also have bills like with Bull Bitcoin in Europe. And that's what I replicated in Costa Rica, and I'm replicating it in Mexico. So I'm a big fan of just fucking hold.
Oh.
For me, it's like just hold all your fucking wealth in Bitcoin. And you know what? When it's a bear market, just earn more money. Like earn more money. Get off your ass and fucking earn.
Devil's advocate question here.
Yes.
Isn't new fiat created every time you go negative fiat? So because you're basically taking a loan and you need to pay it back with interest, and that's how the banks like conjure up the new money, right? So you're actually aren't you like just accelerate in a way? It's accelerating the death of fiat. So it's a good thing that way. But you're also creating more fiat by going credit.
I might be, but I'm not holding it. Right, I might be, but I'm not giving it purchasing power. Right, so I might be I might be participating in the creation of fiat.
You're accelerating the death of fiat.
yes, and I'm not prolonging it by holding fiat. You're prolonging the existence of fiat by borrowing fiat and either buying Bitcoin or buying opportunity or like not selling Bitcoin. Right, so if you borrow fiat, you don't have to buy Bitcoin. Right, you borrow fiat. You spend it because you're not spending Bitcoin. So you're holding Bitcoin by borrowing fiat, whether or not you're actually buying it with your credit card, or you're actually, buying a coffee that you otherwise would have spent with Bitcoin. You're moving the money from fiat to Bitcoin. And honestly, like when I made that decision, I'm like, I'm just gonna opt out of fiat and like see what happens. And that's like my story of being like, well, I never invested in Bitcoin actually. Like I was not investing in Bitcoin. I was young and I was stupid and I didn't have kids and I didn't have expenses. And I was like, I'm just going to do this thought experiment where I'm just going to opt out of the banking system entirely. Right. And still to this day, I don't have a bank account. Like I have a pseudo bank account somewhere in an undisclosed location, but I don't actually use it. By the way, I haven't used a bank. I haven't used a debit card in, like 2.5, 3 years. I haven't used a debit card. I've just been living off of credit cards and the Bitcoin standard on the less than zero. And it's just been, and it's possible to do that now. And that's like, that's what I do for a living at this point. It's like, and that's why Costa Rica has Bull Bitcoin. There's in Costa Rica, Bull Bitcoin is huge in Costa Rica. It's by far the biggest exchange. It's like, and it started out where it was like, I need to replicate what I did in Canada in Costa Rica because I want to use that, right? And the same thing is happening now in Europe, where in Europe, we replicated Bull Bitcoin in Europe, but we also have this thing where the thing that sucks in Europe is that people don't pay each other with SEPA like at the store, whereas in Costa Rica, like the equivalent of SEPA, you pay at the store. Like I go to a grocery store and I will pay with the SEPA equivalent, like with a bank transfer, like not credit cards, like not debit cards. People use bank payments because they're like SMS based. So it's like, I put your phone number. It's a bank transfer that has, it's not an SMS money. It's a bank transfer, but that uses SMS as the communication layer. So we can't replicate the same thing in Europe because you're not going to pay your dinner with SEPA when you go to the grocery store, right? You're going to pay with a debit card. But for anything else, like, so because I want to live in Europe, I do want to live in Europe. Like I've had my time in Costa Rica. It's great. I'm going to always live a large part of the year in Costa Rica, but I miss the civilization of Europe. Like, you've been to El Salvador. It's great. It's awesome. But think about living there
Yeah.
for 5 years. It's long, man. It's long.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that's why also, like, when I met you in Madeira, I was like, Madeira is great because it's kind of like a little jungly and a little out there,
Yeah.
but
But still
also
civilized. Yeah.
when I went to Madeira, I was like, there was the Beethoven Ninth Symphony, which is my favorite symphony, playing at the orchestra of Madeira. And I'm like, I kind of miss that because, like, the only thing to do here in Costa Rica, and I mean, I know a lot of people want to move to Costa Rica, and I highly encourage you to do that. It's a great lifestyle. It's amazing. Like, you'll be healthy. You can do nothing in Costa Rica and be healthy. Like, you'll just become healthy by living there. It's hard to explain, but you will. You're going to become stronger. There's more manual labor. There's sun, the fruits, the meat, everything's great. But, like, what is the social thing to do in Costa Rica? Well, you just go to the beach and watch sunsets, right? And the sunsets are amazing, but I'm like at my 1,700th sunset. It's like but still, the whole point being, if I'm a sovereign individual and I want to live in Europe, I need to have a bank account because I need to pay rent, and I need to buy a car, I need to do all those things. So that's why we replicated this, like, bills in Europe. It's because I want it. My wife is French. My baby is French. I'm also a French citizen. Even though I'm a Canadian citizen, I'm also a French citizen. So it's like, if I'm going to live somewhere, I want to be able to live on a Bitcoin standard. And if the infrastructure doesn't exist or it's not as good as I want, I'm going to build it.
Yeah, true that, man. Francis, this has been a great conversation. I absolutely love it. It's always great to see you, and always great to see, like, to confirm that you have this deep connection with other Bitcoiners that may have, like, discovered this thing through a completely different route than you did, but you still have these core values that just resonate. I absolutely love it. And if there's anything me and Luke can do for to help Bull Bitcoin take over Europe, we will be more than happy with any type of collaboration. Anything we can do for you,
Sweet.
man, we'll love it. And I hope to see you again soon at one of the conferences.
Oh, definitely. I'm gonna be in Prague this year. Yeah, I'm gonna be in Prague this year. And, like, the Bitcoin crew that we have in Europe is fucking so good. These guys are French Bitcoiners. So you got Theo Mogenet, which is just incredibly intelligent and, like, extremely based. And what's funny is, like, the Bull Bitcoin team in France is, like, not at all like the general culture of France. It's like, I just got the most based guy.
Yeah.
We got Jimmy, Gilles Cadignan, and JJ. JJ is, like, insanely based.
JJ is great. Yeah.
Yeah, JJ is hilarious. So we got these guys, and then we're starting out. So it's available everywhere in Europe. But we started out in France because I'm French. We all speak French, and Bull Bitcoin's like international, but, like, still a lot of us are from Quebec. So French is, like, the main language with English. So it just made sense for us to be in French, but in France. Yeah, man, I'm, like, so excited to start doing content in Spanish and Italian and Portuguese. And the way that we, Bull Bitcoin marketing, it's like, it's really, like, there's two things that we use for our quote unquote marketing. It's meetups and content, right? So it's like, for me, meetups is the absolute key. I mean, I've been running the Bitcoin. I don't run it anymore, but I'm the owner of the Bitcoin meetup since 2013 in Montreal. And, like, why do I have such a deep knowledge of Bitcoin? It's because I've been to, like, I want to say, like, 300 Bitcoin meetups in my life or something like that. And it's my favorite thing to do. It's like this. And you've been to, you know what it is because you go to a lot of conferences, right? So you understand that.
And meetups too. This is the way I view it. Like, after having traveled the world for a couple of years and ping pong the conferences, like, Bitcoin is small everywhere, but it is fucking everywhere. Like, it's absolutely everywhere. There's a based Bitcoiner in every one-horse town in every country on earth. Like, we're everywhere and we're unstoppable. Like, it's insane.
And the odds of you becoming friends with, like, a random guy at the grocery store is low. The odds of you becoming friends with a Bitcoiner are high, regardless of what other childhood you may have had, experiences,
it's inevitable.
background, and, like, and if it's a cypherpunk Bitcoin maxi, the odds of you becoming good friends are, like, I would say, like, 85%. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like it's very rare. it's very rare that
insane.
I'm not friends with the Bitcoin maxi cypherpunk guy, and like it might not be a safe long-term strategy, but as you said, like if I know that your values are solid in terms of these two things, like you are for privacy and sovereignty and self-custody, and also you're not a shitcoiner, then I'm gonna have a soft spot in terms of trust, right? I'm gonna immediately lower my barrier, and again, that can be exploited. So people have to be careful because anybody can tell you that they're a cypherpunk maxi if they know that that's what you want to hear. And I lived that at the Bitcoin Embassy by people telling me they were libertarians, right? Because I used to immediately trust libertarians, and then I realized that actually
Bad idea.
a lot of libertarians are fucking scammers.
No,
So-
and that's the way. When the name of the game is money itself, it of course attracts a ton of scammers, like 99%, which is why crypto exists. But it also attracts these high integrity, high intelligence people that are the tiny fraction, but they're the best people in the world. Like,
and thank God for open source software and Twitter and social media, because like when I meet someone, and this is something also that Matex taught me, it's the question is like, okay, what do you do for Bitcoin?
Yeah.
Like what have you built? Like show me, like and you don't have to be a software developer, right?
No.
Like okay, so you have content, show me your content. Like you have this, show me this. Like prove to me, like what's your proof of work in Bitcoin, right? So, and if someone tells me like, oh well, I've just been holding Bitcoin and doing nothing, I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna use that against you, because it's totally fair. It's totally fine to just hold Bitcoin and do nothing for Bitcoin. That's totally fine.
But it's not that interesting.
No, it's not that interesting. And I'm not going to have this rapport with you because even though we are all Bitcoiners, if we hold Bitcoin, there's a difference between a Bitcoiner and like a Bitcoin builder, like someone who's like, I'm in Bitcoin and like, because it's my mission, is different than I'm in Bitcoin because I want to preserve my wealth. And that's totally respectable and it's totally fine, but it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing.
And I think like I can only speak for myself, but I can't help myself. Like I needed to be evangelized, like to spread this skeptics version of the gospel, if you will. Like that's what it just, I couldn't resist. Like I needed to write, I needed to get out there and create content.
Yeah, so, and it's kind of like these early European like monk monasteries or something. Like, the thing that we have that bring us together is we have a flame, and it's hard to explain what it is, but like we all have this burning desire inside of us, and like I see it in other people, and I'm like, if you have this burning desire and I have this burning desire, then like it's like there's, you can't have the burning desire to evangelize Bitcoin if you're evil, right? It's really hard.
No, you can't. No, but we've seen we've seen we have the truth goggles thing. Like we've seen the future, what it can hold. Like we've seen how beautiful it can be, and what greater cause to fight for. I don't know, Francis. I'm gonna have to like stop this.
Yeah, so I gotta go too.
The thing is, I want to a couple of other things. You're coming to Prague, you said. Yeah. I think I'm coming to Calgary. I don't know.
Oh shit! Really?
Calgary.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to both.
It's in the final stages. I think I'm coming. We're still negotiating, but there's a good chance. And I want you to come to, or we want you to come to BTC Hell in August if you can. Are you coming to Baltic Honey Badger again?
Yeah.
The week after in Helsinki.
Oh, really?
We are, Luke and I are part of organizing this conference in Helsinki, and Marty Malmi is also there.
I'm going to be spending my summer in Europe, so I'll definitely be around. Sounds good.
BTC Hell, we'll send you all the details and stuff. Like we'd love to have you there. Scandinavians need based voices. They need to hear that there's another way than just being a sheep and saying bah bah and following whatever the authorities say.
I'm glad you're coming to the rodeo. We're gonna have great fun, and we're gonna give you a taste of the cowboy lifestyle. So obviously, Matex is a proper fucking cowboy. So we're gonna do some redneck North American shit. Shoot guns, blow shit up.
I love that.
Have tons of fun, man. All right. It was great.
And is there anywhere on the internet you want to send our listeners before we wrap up, other than Bull Bitcoin everywhere?
Bullbitcoin.com. Well, no, actually, so the Bull Bitcoin has two apps right now. There's the Canadian app, and then there's the European app, which are fully different apps. So if you want to try it out, go to app.bullbitcoin.com, app.bullbitcoin.com. If you go on bullbitcoin.com, you're going to see like a Europe kind of button. But if you just want to go straight to the app, go to app.bullbitcoin.com and, try it out. We launched it like 3 months ago, and it's a new app. It's not the same as the Canadian one. So it's not in beta. It's like, obviously it's functional, it works. But if you have any suggestions or comments or feedback is like absolutely critical. And it's not like complaining to Coinbase where they're just going to tell you that, no, like if you have something that you don't like or that you like or something that's missing that you want, as I say, we're a small team, and like people would be surprised how quick we can add stuff, hey, I would like to have a button here to do this. It's like, okay, cool. Like I didn't think anybody wanted that. So I'll just put the button there like you wanted. So it really is like dynamic. And also the Bull Bitcoin wallet right now it's only Google Play. It's going to be on iOS as soon as I'm in a little legal carcuffle with iPhone anyway, paperwork stuff. But it's way easier to create an Android app than an iPhone app. I guarantee you that. But try the Bull Bitcoin app. There's also a Telegram group. When you download the Bull Bitcoin wallet, if you go to the settings, there's a Telegram group for enhancements, comments, improvements, that kind of stuff. It's pretty active. It's actually pretty fun. So try it out. And then same thing, like we have 14 engineers working at Bull. We're a lot of engineers. Half of the team is engineering. So hey, I would like this feature. Just don't hesitate to say it, and there's like a non-zero chance that we'll just immediately put it in if you want. So Bull Bitcoin app on Android, download it, join the Telegram group, give feedback, app.bullbitcoin.com. If you have feedback, there's a live chat. This is actually my favorite feature with Bull Bitcoin. We never had a ticket system. I'm against customer support tickets. There is just a live chat that's never ending. So it's a human behind it. So if you want questions, just go in the live chat. I guarantee you someone's going to answer within like 30 minutes. So give us your feedback. Let us know what you need. Let us know what's missing, and we'll find a way to put that in there.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Knut.
We'll have to put in Code Infinity for some special feature, because you can use Code Infinity for all sorts of other stuff on the internet, including discount on the tickets to all of these conferences we were talking about.
No. So we'll give you a code, and then whoever uses the code gets 0.25% off on the Bitcoin price. So it's actually pretty good. So
I'll heard it from the man. Yeah.
All right. Sounds
there
good,
we
man.
go.
Thank
you, Francis.
Knut. Take it easy. Have a good evening.
You too,
Bye,
man.
Guys.
This has been the Bitcoin Infinity Show. Over and out.